Morning. How are you doing? How was your week? It's nice to be talking to you again and visiting with you. This is our show on, what is it today? The 14th, I guess. They're having the 14th today. Saturday, 2017. Still early in the new year, but moving quickly. I hope you're doing well. And just basically here to have a short one-to-one talk with you. Instead of doing a big public radio show, it's just me and you here today. And it's kind of funny because, you know, when I was a long time ago in junior high and even high school, I used to be really afraid of public speaking. And I'm not saying that, you know, in a minor way. I would feel like I was going to be sick. It was really the most terrifying, threatening thing that I could imagine, pretty much. And completely ridiculous, but I really felt like that. And when I finally got over it, the way that I did that was, and I did do it, by the way. I'm not getting sick at the moment. I feel pretty good. I decided to give up public speaking forever. I would never do it again. I would never even consider doing it. I wouldn't mind talking to 1 million people, but I would never do public speaking. And that might sound kind of contradictory, but minor little things in your brain about, you know, as we've been talking about, what you believe, those control not just your whole life, but it has a deep influence on everything around you. So when I gave up public speaking, and regardless of the number of people I was talking to, it was just one-on-one in my mind, then complete relaxation and all that was gone, and nothing physical changed. It's just I found a belief that I didn't even know I had and dropped it and replaced it with a different one, and that's powerful. So anyway, I didn't mention it, but this program is called Church of the Essene Teacher, and it's in reference to the teacher that's mentioned in the Essene Gospel of Peace, which, as I always say, is not a religious book. It's just a little account of some things that happened between this teacher and some people that were physically sick, which always goes with other levels of sickness, of course, but they were aware of being physically sick and they wanted to know from him what to do. And his advice to them is that book. It's very short. You can read it for free as a PDF on the internet under Essene Gospel of Peace, Book 1. There are 4 books, but I'm only talking about the first one. The other ones don't have that energy charge from me, but the first one does. The other ones are more like religions, but the first one is just a, you know, personal talk. It's pretty amazing. So this show is not a religious show. It's like Obama said about your doctor, except this one's for real. If you have a religion or a lack of religion or whatever belief you have, and you like it, you can keep it. But I'm not kidding. You really can keep it. This is not a religious show, not trying to convince you of anything, just sharing experience and impressions. And since it's only with you, you don't have to worry about, you know, there being any kind of other audience or anything. It's just personally with you. And if you feel like calling up at some point and sharing what you think about any of these things with the rest of the world, I always forget to mention the number so nobody gets it, but I'll try to remember, and that is 657-383-1002, 657-383-1002, for as long as what you want to talk about has something to do with health and consciousness, which I'm pretty sure you're not going to be able to think of any topics not connected to those things. So there's a lot going on in the world around us right now. The energy's really intensifying, positive and negative both. This is known as a planar frequency of duality, and that means everything's in opposites here. Sometimes they're really out of balance, but they swing back and forth. And even though the situations are really complex, and that's true, and any field of knowledge is just about infinitely complex, because the smaller you look at it, like under a microscope or an electron microscope, or you just keep uncovering more and more and more and more, and one atom turns into a universe and it just keeps going. I'm sure the same thing would happen with one subatomic particle if you could look at it in enough detail. And the same thing happens when you get bigger and you look at solar systems and galaxies, and there are billions of galaxies in just this, what we call the physical universe. And according to very interesting sources, there are almost an infinite number of similar universes like this one, and then beyond. And that's only the tiniest blip on the screen of all the different frequencies of reality that are simultaneously existing as real or more so than the one that we're aware of. So this is a big place, and there's enough detail to keep you busy with that, and you'd never even scratch the surface. But there's another angle for understanding. You know, modern science is kind of completely crazy right now, and it thinks it's going to understand by analyzing every detail. And that's not going to happen. There's too many details. But fortunately, there are patterns, and there's an essence of things that are happening that have been known to teachers, including the one we're referring to here, Essene Teacher. It wasn't that he was teaching something Essene. He would just happen to be teaching to the Essenes at that time. But the same thing was being taught back to the beginning when humans started. And there wasn't really any difference in the essential reality that was being conveyed, because that was there before its reflection that we call the real world even started. So the teachers that come and try to convey this to people, they're not trying to get them to join a religion. They're trying to get them to understand who they are, where they came from, how to live while you're here in this, you know, the clothes that you're wearing, which people call physical bodies, and how to get back in touch with where you came from without waiting until you leave this lifetime, so that you can do more while you're here. And sometimes they do, you know, promote religions of different kinds if the populations are going crazy and they're just at such a low level of consciousness they all want to kill each other. So Akhenaten in Egypt tried to do that. He was aware of much higher levels of reality, and he used the sun as a symbol to let people know it was all coming from one source. But that didn't work out the way that he was trying to do it, and the people ended up killing him. He got poisoned and sealed up in a coffin and other things like that. But the same teaching continues. So what's going on around us is a response to a rise in consciousness where people are starting to get just a tiny bit self-aware. And as a result, the vast negative power structure is responding to that. And what's going on with Trump is just kind of symbolic of what's happening worldwide as people start to wonder and question things, which really is supposed to be the basis of science, right? Question everything. Just like the bumper sticker that was around in the 60s that said question authority, and then there was one that after that. And I remember driving around behind cars that had that. I think it was red and white. And then one that followed that said question everything. Would have been good for people to understand what that actually meant. But, you know, so if you take the attitude of understanding without having to know all these millions of details, and you just look at the basics of what's happening in the outside world right now, it's that most of the top positions in the power structure in governments and their partner global corporations are filled up with individuals of very malevolent intent. And you could call them evil. I don't mean that in a religious way. I just mean you could define evil as the people who are really wanting suffering and death and destruction as their goal. And there's lots of those. And it doesn't mean they're intrinsically bad. It means they're really out of touch with who they are, to the extent that they're willing to kill you in order to get ahead or get money or power or follow orders or whatever. There's lots of those people. And they're very sophisticated in that strategy that they're using. And they use language as one of their primary weapons. And that's why it was so important to them to control the media because that's like a constant brainwashing, and there's probably in America something like half the population, and it may be similar in other places or worse, half the population that is just sitting unconscious in front of the television, and it's like zombies repeating what they hear just all day and in their dreams at night, repeating the same beliefs and thinking that it's their own ideas, but it's not. It's what they've picked up. So the few leaders in the world, and there aren't that many really, but there are more and more that are going against this power structure. Trump is one of them, but Putin is another one. That's why the media says, he's basically the devil, and that anybody who wants to be cooperative with other countries, especially Russia, because they're bucking the power system, is a Russian agent and, a traitor, etc., etc. And using that line of reasoning, it's very possible they'll try to either arrest or kill Trump in the coming days or somewhat after he takes office. I think they're probably evaluating, among other things, how much of Congress they totally control right now through blackmail and bribes. And if it's enough, they may figure they might as well just go ahead and block everything that Trump wants to do. But he endangered his own life to a great extent this week, even more than before, because he did something completely unforgivable. Are you aware of that? Well, he probably did a bunch of unforgivable things, but the one that became most public, actually before he intended it to become public, because the person he invited into it just spilled it before they were supposed to. He actually, remember during the Republican debates, if you saw that, Trump was the only one to make a comment that questioned vaccination. And that's like one of the sacred idols of this civilization, that you don't question. They say things like the science is settled, but that's an oxymoron. Science can't ever be settled, or it's not science. If it's settled, it's a religion that you're not allowed to question, or else you're a bad person. And that's what vaccination or vaccinism is. So Trump actually named an official commission to look into vaccine safety, which of course does not exist, because all vaccines are damaging, as Dr. Molden explained on our show very well. And he made it an official commission to look into vaccination, and beyond that, scientific integrity. This is a huge issue, and you're not supposed to talk about it. You're not supposed to be aware of it. You're not supposed to think about it, because what could it lead to? Questioning authority. And that would be just a disaster from the power structure's point of view. So Trump openly did this, and if his life was in danger before, it's 1,000 times more now. So he needs a lot of protection from higher levels and a lot of good thoughts from people sending them to him. So as for this and other reasons, as the inauguration comes up, which is, 6 days away now, Open Society Foundation, George Soros, many other people in the negative power structure are funding terrorist groups like Black Lives Matter and any of the Muslims willing to commit murder and chaos in cities. And they're allowed to scream out, "It's for Allah, it's fine." As long as they commit violence and murder, they are perfect for what the rulers want right now. So starting today, which is Saturday when we're talking, the 14th, this is the unofficial start of this campaign, this battle to cause nationwide disruption, and the media will be there in an attempt to make it look like the whole American public is against Trump and knows he's a Russian agent and has to be arrested or killed. That's what they want it to look like. And that starts today. So all these groups with plenty of money from Soros and other sources will be going to Washington to try to cause as much chaos as possible. If they can force the inauguration indoors, they'll do that. If they could stop it, which I don't think they probably can unless they successfully try an assassination. If they could stop it, that would be really great from their point of view, but otherwise they just want to make it look like the entire American public is against Trump. He's a Nazi, racist, homophobic, misogynist monster who hates everybody and only cares about himself. Stuff like that. And there are actually millions of people who believe that. And they will set the groundwork for something like, the FBI or the CIA coming up and trying to arrest him. Watch for stuff like that, as well as false flag events, terrorist events blamed on Trump supporters, which they'll have brought in to blame, things like that. That's the arsenal that they're working on. The idea being that if it gets widely enough known beforehand, it takes some of the power away. But it's definitely a big drama that's playing out. I talked to Mike Adams about a week ago, and he was saying that this phenomenon of people just completely hypnotized by what's on the television and most of the newspapers and most of the radio stations and stuff is just really amazing. And he was pretty cynical when I talked to him, and felt like there was maybe the cell towers, I'm sure that, in all likelihood they're involved in one of their biggest goals is to control thought and emotion. And according to Barry Trower, who, by the way, is coming back shortly with another great guest, I'll tell you about that in a minute, has said, yes, it's for a long time it's been really easy to use these frequencies from the towers and other microwave generators to control thoughts. And he said, if I have the technology and the knowledge to make you into a killer or into, a person that believes anything I decide you should believe. And I'm sure they're ramping up to that now. And some people say that, well, if they have all this technology, this terrible technology available, why aren't they just killing us all right now? And I think that's an excellent question, and I've looked at it a lot in depth. And the only thing that I can come up with that makes any sense is that we're involved in a ritualistic sacrifice right now, which is religious. That is one thing that is. And it doesn't really matter what you call it. Some people have called it Satanism, and other people have called it other things. But at the very top levels, I really think they believe in this thing of sacrificing an animal to become holy and to finally accomplish your goal. Except that in this case, we're the sacrificial animal, and so is all normal life in the biosphere. And if they skip the steps and they don't do the ceremony correctly, their God will fly into a rage and do something unpleasant to them. So I think they're really interested in doing it correctly, and I think they're well into it and trying to do it as quickly as they can, and the end game is extermination. And sorry to be blunt, but I don't see any great advantage to making it sound like, it's different than it really is. But that is not to be cynical or negative or anything of the sort at all. Because, as we've talked about a lot before, we have massive power of healing and, everything on the light side, which ultimately is the real one, and it's the one that ends up being there in the end. But even though I have no doubt whatsoever that all of us, every single one of us, is going to be fine in the long run, but I'm concerned about the short run, and I think that the plan is for things to get more unpleasant right now, and I'd rather not see that happen. There's a lot of good things happening, and they need to have energy supporting them, and we are the energy source. So, or we're not really that's kind of, double meaning. The source is the source, and it comes through us if we let it. It depends on what station we tune to. We can be the conduit for any kind of energy that we want. So, why not let that be the best it can be? And I'm there's a bunch of things I want to tell you about at once here. people have asked me this week, I said, well, love energy is really nice and everything, but it's way too weak. What we really need right now is fighting, and kind of in line with what Alex Jones is kind of in the middle right now. He's getting more and more in touch with loving his constituency and the people that are working in any one of these different ways around the planet for a renaissance of real humanity again. But he's also still part of him into killing the bad guys. And it's not that that's wrong necessarily, especially if it's defensive, but the energy, the frequency, the energy signature of hating anybody, even if it's bad guys, limits severely what you can do. And on the surface, it looks like, and I'm talking, from experience in martial arts and things before this level. And if you are in the energy of hatred and destruction, then it's very limited what you can do. And it always leads to its own sort of reaction. So, in the cartoons long ago, they always had this kind of stereotypical feud going on between the Hatfields and the McCoys. I don't know if you ever saw that in really old cartoons. But the main point of it was it never ended. You've always got one side winning, and then the other side winning, and then the other side winning. And even when you win, in quotes, it just leaves the other side just waiting until they can beat you. And that's not really a peaceful conclusion. So love and harmony are not really too weak. In fact, love and harmony in the ultimate sense are the force that's holding the entire creation together. I would have said the entire universe, but it's much more than just this universe. There are multiple levels. So it's not just an idea, and it doesn't weaken physical force at all. In fact, it's just the opposite. If you gradually learn to let that energy flow through you without you standing in the way and blocking it, the healing force that comes through you is not limited. And I remember, didn't you guys see the movie Lord of the Rings, and the third one? What was it? Return of the King, I think they called it. And near the end of it, and this is a great story. If any of you haven't seen it and haven't read the book, the books are even better than the movies, but the movies were well done. And they have a council near the end when things look really hopeless. And there's this bad fortress called Mordor where the evil king is, and he has this tremendous power, and they have a lot of great people with them, Gandalf and Aragorn and people like that, but they don't have enough to overcome Mordor by force. And they decide to attack anyway, and to buy time for Frodo, because he's got the ring and he's going to throw it in Mount Doom, and that's really the potential salvation of civilization. There's a lot of incredible symbolism in this story that's really valid. And so they end up going out in this little tiny force against this vast fortress of Mordor. And right before they attack, Aragorn looks back at the other people in his group, because he's leading them. And the expression on his face, if you look at that in the movie, it's not hatred and destruction. It's incredible love and kindness. And he looks with that energy toward his friends. And then he turns around and charges into the orcs. So it's not becoming weak. It's really the opposite. And what happened is that, no, he had no chance to win, but he won anyway, because it bought time for Frodo to throw the ring, which you could see as symbolizing false identity and fear and everything that's not true. And it has to be thrown into the mountain, into the lava, and dissolve. And every single one of us is the one carrying that ring. So there are a lot of paradoxes going on. But just because two things are mutually exclusive and by logic they can't both happen, doesn't mean they won't both happen. Because the paradox, impossibility of two mutually exclusive things happening is on the level of very limited intellect, and reality is, many levels above that. So a lot of good things are happening. Along with Trump naming this commission, there's a fantastic series, and it was my fault I didn't tell you about it last week. I should have done that. I hope some of you know about it anyway. It's called Vaccines Revealed, and it's got the government seal of approval, which means they tried to shut it down. There was a massive denial of service attack on the website when they tried to put out the first episode. They had to get massive amount of expert help and open up emergency websites and things like that to get it to go. But it's going, and it's really well done. I mean, I don't have time to watch it, and I'm watching it anyway because it's amazing. It's horrible because it's really emotional, and it's got a lot of mothers and fathers of vaccine damaged children that they talk to in depth. Our guest from a couple weeks ago, or last week, I guess, Dr. Tony Bark, is a major star in this movie, doing a lot of the interviewing. She does an incredible job, and it's a great series. So I think they've had 4 of them so far out of 9. You can still see all the rest. It's free. So if you go to vaccinesrevealed.com, you can sign up for it. I recommend doing that today. And it'll give you a link, and you can watch the rest of them. And what I'm hoping is that there will be a way to have all of them permanently available. But I haven't seen that announced yet. It would be a very valuable tool. And I hope it doesn't cost a lot of money to get that set, because it's something that should be given out to everybody for education, and it could help tip the balance in terms of public distrust of vaccination, which would be great. And, just like Russia is being promoted as this big demon right now, anti-vaccine people are in the same category. Not necessarily Russian agents, but just terrible people who want, they're actually some of the mothers in the interviews on Vaccines Revealed are saying that when they tried to say that their child who just fell apart after the vaccine was injured by a vaccine, they were called baby killers because they were trying to convince other people not to get vaccinated. Excuse me. So there's this tremendous intimidation, and it's not entirely the fault of the doctors. That they're going along with brainwashing, just like most of us in some way have gone along with the same thing. So if we think they should break out of their programming, well, the obvious response is, all right, you first. So instead of just looking at how somebody else is programmed, if we really want to change it, we have to be brave enough to see how we are and let that go. And it doesn't mean finding our own programs and attacking them by force, because that will not work. That's trying to go on a, the orange peel and grapefruit diet or something for the rest of your life. It's usually not successful, and you end up eating mostly chocolate cake or whatever it is you think you gave up. So the real power is not in force and hatred and gritting your teeth and just going against what you feel. The real force is in deep relaxation with full consciousness and focus. And in particular, what you have to relax is the spots in your consciousness that are all tied up in knots. And you're the only one that can really find those. But if you find them and give them the directive to relax, and you know that you're in charge of your own being, they have to relax. They don't get to argue about it. They have to relax. This is a huge, powerful tool. So if you do that, then energy can start flowing through you that wasn't there before. And the experience of that is different. So anyway, the vaccine commission that is coming, the desire to work with other countries, that this incoming president is one of his main unforgivable sins is that he doesn't want to bomb anybody. He's the only candidate in either party that totally didn't want war and fighting. Wants cooperation. Massive prosperity has already started coming toward the U.S. Car companies, factories of all kinds that left as they were supposed to after NAFTA and everything that followed it, they've already said they're coming back. The cities could come back to life. This is another unforgivable sin of Donald Trump, because we're supposed to have economic disaster where we all are so poor we can't do anything except just struggle to survive through that day, and people like that are not in danger of having time to organize any dissent or resistance. And then we're supposed to get dependent on government food, full of drugs, full of vaccines, and that's the end of their having to deal with points of view that they don't want around. So the fact that Trump is going against all that makes him probably the biggest target that's existed for a very long time. And the best way to support anybody like that, not just Trump, but the leaders that are emerging in Europe and other parts of the world that want a whole different direction, is what you do inside yourself. So opening, a bigger taboo along this line than vaccines is the power that you personally, I don't mean anybody else, I'm talking to you. The power that you personally are carrying is not possible to measure. And the only reason that that's not flowing freely through every one of us right now, there's only one person that can block it, and that's us. So if you find out where you're blocking it, you've heard that, teachers saying things like, greater things than these shall ye do. It's not some kind of evil black magic nonsense. It's just true. And you're supposed to use these huge powers for healing and for good, not for making other people agree with you, but for demonstrating. Because if they see what you are, that's going to make them want to be like that. And no matter how much you argue about how they should be, if you're not that, then it's a total waste of time. And you probably get the opposite response. So experimenting and exploring inside yourself without anybody else having to know anything about what you're doing is probably the most powerful thing that you could possibly do. And no, it doesn't mean that you have to give up getting your petition signed or going to work and doing your job or taking care of your kids or whatever is occupying your time. You still need to do that as well as you can. But if you do the internal work, whatever it is you're doing on the outside becomes thousands of times more effective. So to even start that, and I hope this makes some sense to you. I mean, I wish I was better at explaining it, but I just have to see what's possible. So if you want to become aware and let that current flow through you and become much, much more powerful for helping to heal the world, you have to start by being willing to understand the program that you're running now. That's, part of what meditation's about. That's a beginning first step of what it's about, is getting quiet enough, which most people don't do their whole life. They never stop the racing chatter of thoughts and critique of other people, and, oh, this guy's really stupid, or, well, this person made this huge mistake, I would never make that, and or this, on the other side, this person's really great, and, people worshiping movie stars and everything. All that keeps the attention away from yourself, which is the only place you can change the basic pattern. So if you get your mind quiet and relaxed enough, not by force, it doesn't work. It has to relax. Not the kind of relaxation where you fall asleep, but where you stay awake and conscious. Anyway, it's a matter of relaxing, and it's the kind of relaxing without tension, without falling asleep on the other side. And so you have to find out where it's usually mirrored in your physical body. If there's a spot in your shoulder, your neck, or your head, or anywhere in your body that is cramped or tense or uncomfortable, it always mirrors something on the consciousness level, which is really handy, because if you can really relax the physical knot in your body, there's a corresponding place in your emotional level and your consciousness that will relax at the same time. And that's the reason that when people go and have body work by some talented therapist, physical therapy or pressure points or meridians or acupuncture or other things that they're working on, if they're really good and they release some tied up spot in your body, people sometimes just start crying and going through all this emotional stuff. It's because all these things mirror each other. And it's a kind of a glimpse into what's called reflexology. And a lot of people have you heard of that? There are books on it. Some of them are really good, and it's a tool you can use on yourself or other people for free if you learn about it. And it's not dangerous. I've never heard of anybody being hurt by it. And the idea, the first part of the idea that I ever heard of was there was a map of the feet, the soles of the feet, and there are spots called reflexes on the feet. Conventional medicine would call this nonsense, but it's not nonsense. I've played with it since the 1970s, and a really skilled person with this can do a lot. And there are spots on this map of the bottom of the feet, and if you put pressure on them, they can actually have a therapeutic effect on the part of the body that goes to. Okay, like if there's an inflamed liver or something like that you'd like to be helping right now, you can't massage an inflamed organ because it doesn't feel good and it could actually be counterproductive. But there's no danger in putting pressure on the spot in the foot that is that map that I guess people put down by trial and error and watching the effects, that's the spot that goes to the liver. And there's probably free stuff that you can watch on YouTube now if you want to learn about reflexology. It's very useful, relaxing, invigorating, energizing therapy that you can do on yourself, or husband or wife or a friend or whoever you're wanting to do this with, and it's very useful. So I would recommend it. But it has huge implications beyond these reflex points on the feet. For one thing, these reflex points are all over the body. They're not just on the feet. And you probably heard of the Asian meridian maps on the body that show longitudinal lines along which energy is supposed to flow. And if you affect something at one point on a certain circuit, it affects things all along that circuit. And likewise, reflexology points in reality are all over the body. But that's just the very beginning. Your consciousness is not limited except by the beliefs that you have that limit it. And most of our beliefs we don't know about. They're what's called subconscious. But they're very powerful. They control your life. They even pull in who's going to come into your life, who's going to bother you, who's going to help you. These things are all magnetically affected by what you're transmitting. And what you're transmitting comes out of your emotional beliefs. And they're mostly, in most people, completely subconscious. So you have to make them conscious. But what I'm saying about reflexology is that your consciousness is powerful enough so that, let's say that there's a spot in your foot that the map says goes to a kidney or a liver or your shoulder or something like that. And you press on that, and so it affects that other part of the body in a good way, helps it relax or something good. Well, if you change your consciousness a little bit and say, now I'm shifting the reflex so that this same spot is going to go to my right eye. Boom, instantly it does. If you don't believe me, it won't. It's not me. If you don't believe it's possible, then it won't. But if you allow it and you just say, now this is going to the right eye, then it does. This should bring up questions in your mind if you're hearing what I'm saying. This is a vast principle. If that's true, what else operates on this reflex principle? Everything. To put it, concisely, everything does. So this is why, for example, that blessing and curses work. Because people allow themselves to believe that they can, so they do. And sometimes they'll use a physical prop like the doll in voodoo, right? So if you do something terrible to this doll and say, this is going to this person, which is a really dumb thing to do. Don't try it at home or anywhere else or in your mind or anything. Don't ever try that. Because the dumb thing about voodoo is that whatever you do to somebody else gets multiplied and comes straight back to you, starting immediately, and sometimes much worse later. So, important safety tip, as they said in Ghostbusters, don't do this. And that's why, okay, not just because it's not nice to hurt other people, but there's no difference between hurting somebody else and hurting yourself. This is why, I really advocate 100% selfishness in every aspect of life. Because if you understand what it means, the best way to serve yourself and get everything you want is pour out every bit of your energy to help other people, good people, bad people, it doesn't matter. Everybody. And it doesn't mean go try to convince some murderer, to become, somebody different. That might not be a good idea. But you can do it silently. And the lesson of cell towers, I just had I told you that Barry Troyer is coming on the show, right? That's probably going to be in a couple of weeks or so. I just talked to him yesterday. You can only reach Barry by landline in the UK and in the country, in a remote place where they have very few cell towers. He doesn't have a computer. He doesn't have a cell phone. He really lives what he preaches. And after I talked to him, I talked to this lady, Virginia Farver, who's a well-known activist in the same area, microwave radiation, cell towers. She had a son killed by a cell tower that made a cancer cluster, which they typically do. People around cell towers have a much higher rate of cancer. So she's devoted herself to doing this, and I was talking to her about the anti-cell towers, which is us. And no, it doesn't mean you go around in the middle of the night and disassemble a cell tower. It means that you are radiating healing energy that is way stronger than any cell tower is ever going to become. But the problem is that unless it becomes focused, totally relaxed so that this energy can come through, because it's not originating with your physical body, it's just coming through it. Unless you learn that consciousness, it doesn't work. And yeah, you're radiating stuff all the time, but it's not useful. It's chaotic. A lot of it's negative. A lot of it's destructive, even if we don't know it. You got to make that conscious again to make this useful. But this is the biggest taboo, more than learning about that vaccines never prevented any diseases in their entire history, or that the mainstream media is almost entirely lies. Those are not the biggest taboos. Who you are and what you can do, what can come through you, that's the biggest one I know of. And fortunately, even if you don't have any resources or money on the physical level, that's one you can do. So that's a matter of becoming aware of the programs that are running through you right now, watching them like a third-party observer. And yeah, we've come to identify with them as ourselves, but it's not our real identity. It's just the identity that we've taken on. And we have a real identity, but that's not it. And so if you kind of start observing those things, watch the thoughts going through your mind, and being willing to look at subtle things. How do you feel right now? There's more than one feeling. There's a whole complex of things going on. How many of them are you aware of? And the thoughts and the feelings are connected. So, looking at the reflexology idea, you are the reflex point that goes to the whole rest of everything. And the reason reflexology works, and the reason that principle is true, is because, like Akhenaten was trying to tell the Egyptians a long time ago, and it didn't work with most of them, there's a single source for everything, and it has nothing to do with your beliefs. It was way before any religions, okay? They had this source before anybody thought up a philosophy or a belief system. So memorizing a belief is not going to make you conscious. You have to be quiet, and you have to get focused, and you have to observe. And remember, science is about observation, not about memorizing how vaccines are safe and effective so you can be paid as an official scientist, to kill people. That's not really what science is about. So science is observation, and that the main thing that you have to observe is internal to yourself. So you say, what are the thoughts running through my mind right now? And I'm just letting you know that there's something behind those. And if you reconnect to it, there are levels and levels and levels and levels, each one behind the other one, quieter and quieter. And they have more and more power. And this is what we're not supposed to discover. So the negative power structure that's had a multi-generational program to destroy the entire biosphere. And at the top level, they think that they're going to disappear and merge into cyberspace and become immortal, and that's the whole, end game, and it's going to be really great. It's not going to work that way, because it's not how consciousness works. But by the time they figure that out, it could be a real mess here. And personally, I would prefer that that doesn't happen. Eventually they're going to figure out that's not true, and they're going to have to go through a long process to get back to themselves, just like any of us would. But why not do it now? So rather than wanting to destroy people within the negative power structure, I would rather encourage them to stop and reconsider their direction, because if they really want their own happiness and well-being and exhilaration and energy and all that, which they do, they're making a little mistake thinking you can get it by destroying other people, because this entity that they're following says suffering is great. It's possible for them to defect and to do a lot of good work from within the negative power structure, and I want us to encourage them to do that. And the best way for us to encourage them is to change what we're transmitting. And you can't really do that without becoming aware of what you're transmitting now. This is what, meditation and a deeper aspect of prayer is all about. And people have asked me during the week about this workshop coming up. No, it's not necessary to do the workshop to do this, but it might be really helpful. So if you do get a chance, we moved the flyer for that workshop onto the main page, and I think it might show up on the other pages too, of lostartsradio.com. and I've been sending it to the people that were not connected to our show that wanted to see it. But I recommend that you go there. And James Morrison, who was on the show, you can listen to that archive again if you want to, has offered to have people just call him up or email him personally with any questions at all, and he can answer them better than I can. But it's a particular approach to internal connection and consciousness that I started working on in that form in about 2009. So I've played with it for the last 7 years, and I'm getting a lot more focused on it now. It doesn't mean there's only one way to do this. I'm not saying anything like that. People always want to say our way is the best and everybody else is wrong. I'm not doing anything like that. I'm just sharing a useful tool that could really help reconnecting to the levels that we need to get aware of again and use them, because if we do, we become whatever the antidote for cell towers might be called. And I want to see that happen. The plan is to cover the entire globe with cell towers very close together, a combination of on the ground and in the air. And it's not to make sure that you can call 911 when you need to. That's not the whole, even though AT&T I talked to, they really think that's the reason. But they have much deeper aspects, which Virginia will talk about when she gets on also with Barry. It's going to be an interesting group discussion because they'll both be on at the same time. But the idea ultimately is to control what you think so that you can't do what we spent the last hour talking about. That's the point. And yeah, it is to make you sick because it interferes with the delicate electrical system of the body. And so do cell phones when you hold them against your head. And so do Wi-Fi devices, which I would advise you not to use. Get ones that you can have hardwired to an Ethernet cable. If you have to have a cell phone, which I have one of too, I don't touch this thing, the cell phone, very often. I mean, maybe I'll pick it up to move it somewhere, but I'll set it on a table when I talk on it. I would recommend that you consider doing the same thing. And I never carry it around on my body, on or off, because there's no question at this point that when they're turned off, they're still operating. And all the spy agencies use them for listening to you even when they're turned off. There are probably other camera functions that they have that we don't know about. Those are actually being built into appliances now. This is part of the coming, what Patrick Wood, who, when he was on our show, talked about as the Internet of Things. In other words, everything, every appliance, every item has an IP address like a computer. They're all monitored. Many of them are spy devices. Samsung and other brands of television now actually have in their manual that you shouldn't say anything in your house that you don't want publicized or sold to third parties, or of course used by the government, because the televisions, the new ones, are collecting everything you say and recording them, and who knows what pictures. So this is going on, and it's going to be increasing at accelerating rates. So the new cars are similar, and they're moving towards making them autonomous, meaning that you won't be allowed to drive them at some point if they get their way. And you won't be able to go anywhere that's not authorized for you personally to go. This is connected to the, what do they call it? In China, it's the new Sesame credit system, where you get a credit score like you have now for your, when you borrow money and whether you pay it back on time, gives you a credit score now called the FICO score and other names like that. You'll have a social credit score, which they're working on now. China's like the proving ground, and it's moving here. It will say whether you're a good citizen or whether you listen to, unacceptable radio programs like this one. Then your show goes down, your score goes down. And if it gets too low, you get banned from the internet, banned from having a job. I'm sure you'd be on the no-fly list. all of your rights get taken away unconstitutionally. And this is what their goal is. And they're moving in that direction. So for all these things, what I'm talking about is the antidote. And the antidote is awakening your own anti-cell tower capabilities. And I don't like that name really, because it's not just to resist the cell towers, it's to totally replace their frequency with a better one. And we actually do, as I know lots of people are going to be saying this is totally ridiculous and it can't be true, and the strength of the electrical current in the human body is practically nothing, and in cell towers it's all of these powerful currents. Well, that's not the whole story. So if you wake that up, you can use it. And one of the big reasons for the whole discussion of health and how to use fasting and juices and raw food and all that is, yeah, it's so that you don't have to go through the nonsense of all these diseases and what you're supposed to believe is normal aging, which is not. It's like the bird song. I can tell you for sure from my point of view, I was a lot older then, and I'm a lot younger now. It's not about me. Anybody can do that. And your own body does that. If you get reconnected to these natural laws, some of which are described in the Essene Gospel of Peace, and you learn how to use them, Heal Yourself 101 by Marcus Rothkranzis touches on that as well in a really good way. Then your body starts reversing the so-called aging by itself. You don't have to figure out how to do it. And it's the same way with consciousness. If you start becoming aware of negative programming in yourself and you start letting that go, it's analogous to stopping consuming processed food. So when you stop the junk food and get away gradually from the cooked food and the meat and all this stuff that you're not designed to run on, start replacing it with live food, then your body just starts to get rid of its problems by itself. It starts doing surgery on 100 trillion cells, or whatever the exact number are in your body, and you don't have to direct that consciously. You just have to stop doing the things that are blocking it. And it's the same with consciousness. So when we get aware of our negative beliefs that we're all full of, and we start dropping those intentionally, this whole wave of higher understanding and energy and healing ability starts to just flood through you by itself. It's just like physical healing. So the reason for learning the laws of nature that we talk about and how to use live food and things like that, and positive redirection of your attention and sun exposure and grounding, exercise and sleep and all these things is, yeah, you get out of most of these problems of physical health, but that's just the beginning. You know, that sets the groundwork for being able to become conscious of what's going on inside you, in your awareness, in your thoughts, in your emotions. And then once you become aware of that, then you'll be able to work on a higher level, which is what this is about. And every one of us can become so much more powerful than a cell tower for real. That, you know, I always figure if our rulers are so confused that they're intending to create hell on earth before the final extermination, which is exactly what they intend to create, then why don't we just do the opposite? I think that would be a reasonable response. And this is a way that you can actually do this for real. Okay, now, Doug, before I run away here, I am going to take a couple of calls, but Doug, our engineer, who had sent me a message a little while ago that I interrupted what I was saying to listen to, he said he had to go and and take his daughter to an event, which is great. So normally he'll talk to you if you call in, and just see where you're calling from, what your name is, and that sort of thing. I can't do that, so if I call on you, it'll be by your phone number, and you can tell me your name and where you're calling from, and let me know if you're a troll, in which case it'll be a really short discussion. And if you're not, we can talk about anything that you're interested in line with these or any other thoughts that you're dealing with. And our number is 657-383-1002. 657-383-1002. There's a lot of people listening to us, and most of you are not feeling like participating, but I really would like to hear from you if you have anything to share. It doesn't have to be fancy or fit any particular style or format. It's just you're the one I'm talking to, and I'm encouraging you to open up your actual capabilities, which are immense. So we've had somebody holding for a while, and if you're just listening, tell me, and I'll put you right back on hold. From 626. I don't remember where that area code is. Are you listening, or do you want to talk? Good morning.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Are you just listening? Or?
Oh, no. My name's Cheryl, and I'm from Idaho. And,
hi, Cheryl. Nice to meet you.
Hello. Nice to meet you. I actually know Dee, or I've been talking to Dee some.
Oh, okay.
And, yeah, she suggested I call in because I have Morgellons. I'm sure you've heard of that before.
Mm-hmm.
I've had that for about 7 years now, and having a hard time with it. She said that you really know a lot about detoxing, and you might have some questions on that.
Yeah, it's true. What kind of symptoms are you dealing with?
Oh my gosh. Well, lately it's been really bad. Actually, today, I woke up and my eyes swollen shut. My skin's really bad. It's all breaking out with everything. It's all lots of sores that have this hard, almost like little slivers of dust coming out, kind of feeling. And I've been dealing with this for years, constantly changing my diet, detoxing, doing all kinds of stuff. Nothing seems to really work or stick.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask you what you're doing for detox, but I want to mention first of all that, just for disclaimer purposes, we're not doing any medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or anything like that. We're just sharing information for education and what we've all come across. And if you need drugs and surgery and your organs cut out, or radiation, or any of those cutting-edge medical science techniques, then you need to go to your doctor immediately, and I'm sure they'll be glad to do that for you. So we're just having an academic type discussion, and we're allowed, at the moment, we're still allowed to do that. So what are you doing for detox and nutrition and stuff like that?
Well, as far as diet, it's no grains, no dairy, no sugar, no processed stuff, basically all organic vegetables, fruits. I just started trying to do, today I'm just going to be drinking vegetable broth and kind of do more just eating some vegetables for a while, and no kind of glucose intake, not even starchy vegetables. I've done that before, and for detoxing, I've been taking some different herbs, there's a formula that has turkey, rhubarb root, and I don't even have everything, but licorice root, like in the morning I wake up and I will have, I'll do the skin brush, which helps the lymphatic system. I take glutathione, and I've been taking that for years.
Okay.
I have been having kefir in the morning. Some B vitamins.
Okay. One thing about the kefir or anything that is milk related is that it really needs to be from organic raw milk. And once you pasteurize milk, it becomes really health destroying. In general, even if it's organic. This is just something I've come across, and I've experimented, for many, many years on that. This is one area that I'm, different from the vegan people, because for detox, I don't use anything related to milk, but for the building phase, a lot of the raw vegans are kind of weak on that. And over the long run, this is just my opinion and my experience, which I started getting into, back in 1965, and I've gone through a long trial and error period with a lot of this stuff. And to me, and I know this makes me an infidel and a renegade from the vegan belief systems, but I haven't used any milk-related things during detox, but during the maintenance and rebuilding phase, I found it extremely valuable. But it has to be, in my experience, absolutely raw. It shouldn't be raw grade A, which is a big scam. And that's where they say, well, yeah, okay, in this state you can sell raw milk in the store, but it has to just be grade A so that nobody gets killed, right? Because germs are the big evil, they're kind of like the Russia of the nature kingdom. They're there to kill everybody, and they're a mistake of God and nature, and modern science is going to save us by killing them all. Well, grade A is all about that. And so they let them sell raw milk if it's grade A. And since they're not cooking it, pasteurizing, they do it with chemicals like hydrogen peroxide, sometimes chlorine, and they do it by putting the chemicals in the buckets or the containers that the milk goes in, and then letting the milk get in touch with it. All the bacteria die, and then they get grade A status, and they get in the store. And they are seriously trying to eradicate real raw milk from America, and I trust the government completely. So they don't do something like that unless it's a wonderful food and one of the best things that you could possibly consume. So the only way I know of to get it, not grade A, is to go to a farmer that has the animals and make sure they're not killing the microlife in the milk. And I use it like that, and it's been incredible. But during the detox phase, detox is all based on fasting. And so when you eat lighter food or more raw food, it's really like kind of going towards fasting. And the reason fasting is detox is not because fasting does something, to get rid of bad organisms. It's because fasting gives the body a break from digesting food. And as a result, it gets this massive amount of new energy to use for whatever is more important. And the body is fully conscious. It's not a pile of atoms or something. So the body is aware all the time of what's on its list to do so that you get healthy. And ever since before birth, every one of us in this environment has had poisons in our body, not just from chemtrail residue, but all kinds of other ridiculous stuff that should never be produced. And it stored it in our cells all over the body in concentrated form because it was the safest place to put it, hoping that it would have time and energy to get rid of it later. And it never got the energy because the energy is always being used up eating and processing and digesting and eliminating food. So that's like the majority of the energy every day and every night. So if that stops, then the body's really intelligent. And it knows, well, the next most important thing is I've got all this waste garbage in the cells that I have to actually take out of each cell, whether it's Morgellons related residue or whatever, and get it into what's called the interstitial fluid around the cell, which is mostly lymph. And it's like 3/4 lymph and the rest blood. And that carries it like the waste system of the body, which is the lymph system. And it gets filtered out through the kidneys and comes out through the skin and every part of the body until it's gone. And that's what automatically happens when you're not using all your energy digesting food. So the people that I've seen who have had the best results with that, and it doesn't matter what the condition is, the body uses the same treatment for everything. So it's not necessary to know the difference between 1,000 different so-called diseases. It starts cleaning, and it gets things into the lymph systems and throws them out. So what the people who have had the best results with this kind of thing have done is to get, if they don't have an emergency life and death situation, they tend to start lightening the diet more toward raw food, absolutely all organic, nothing processed, and starting to get enough rest, good sleep, certain kinds of exercise if they feel up to it, sunlight exposure, which is really a challenge this time of year in the northern latitudes. And even though, some people say, well, you don't need supplements, I have seen people benefit from D3 supplements. And I used to use 10,000 units a day myself. I'm not telling anyone else to do this. Now I'm careful and I get it all from sunlight. But I would say if I wasn't getting the sunlight, I'd probably use the D3 every day according, if you need to go get a recommendation from your healthcare practitioner. Of course, I'm not saying not to do that, but just sharing what I did. Vitamin D is absolutely essential, and it's not the same as sunlight exposure, but it's got a lot of it, and it's really useful. So I would say to do that. And then, in more severe situations, when you've got some really immediate problems, some form of fasting is what the most successful, health teachers are recommending. And I've seen it done at, it's done a lot at Tree of Life, Gabriel Cousins' place. He was on our show every month for a year. And I totally agree with most of what he's saying. As I said, I'm not a vegan because I use raw milk, but I would not use that during cleansing anyway. It's for rebuilding later. And they use fasting there, and they use 100% raw food. And I found that the body is designed to process food in its raw state. And as soon as you cook it, what happens is you leave a much higher level of waste in the processing of the food in your body. And that waste is a breeding ground for unfriendly organisms. And they're not, it's like, this is really important to understand. The bacteria and the microorganisms are not evil. They're there to help us stay alive, and they're there for nature, but they have different jobs. So, for example, if you're making compost in your garden, which is the same thing we're doing in our gut every day, then there are certain microorganisms that move into the compost pile, because if they didn't, it couldn't break down into soil. It would interrupt the recycling that happens in nature. And if you have soil and, organic manure and vegetable waste and stuff in your compost pile, then a certain kind of microorganisms are going to be drawn there to multiply. And it doesn't smell really bad. It's kind of sour a little bit, and it breaks down into beautiful soil. You throw a dead animal onto there and come back in a few days, and it's not the same, because a different kind of bacteria come to break down an animal that has died. It's pretty severe and nasty, and it smells bad. If people had the right kind of compost going in the gut, there would be nothing coming out of your body that ever smelled bad. it's so universal that people think it's normal now, but it's not. So when, these places like Hippocrates in Florida and Gabriel Custin's Tree of Life, what they use is a combination of fasting and raw food and certain juices. And they use a lot of colon hydrotherapy. And every one of them who's talked about fasting has said if you don't do that, which means enemas, which are free and you can do them at home with water. And I've never heard of anybody having any damage, although in the scientific literature that comes from the drug companies, they say, oh, enemas are going to kill you, and, it's way too dangerous. They were in the Merck medical manual up until about 1960, until they got replaced with drugs. But I found them absolutely essential. If there's a toxic condition in the body, I've seen it go away in seconds with enemas. They're very powerful. What Dr. Gerson found out about them was the same. And so moving toward raw food and certain kinds of fasting, which may take working with somebody who really knows what they're doing, the body starts throwing out the basis of whatever's happening. You don't need to know all the exact details of it, and it starts to heal itself. It's the only way that I know of to get rid of any of these conditions. And recently, I have found the most successful place that healing teacher and doctor has been working on this stuff that I've ever come across is Dr. Morse in Florida. And he's in, Port Lago something or other, but he's had to form a private club because he was so successful in healing people with cancer and probably Morgellons and all these other things, advanced rheumatoid arthritis where the joints wouldn't even move anymore, people coming in on stretchers and wheelchairs and getting fully functional again. So naturally, FDA and the others tried to shut him down, attack him, and destroy his practice. And he had to form a private health club, which he calls Dr. Morse's Herbal Health Club. And if you want to look for free at his videos, which are on the internet, hundreds of them, I would say, it's probably a really good idea. And there's a lot to learn there. The stuff he says against milk, I do not agree with. But everything else about detox, I think he's right. He's healed a lot of advanced cancer cases. And so he's still under attack, even as a private club. And he uses fruit. He's different than Hippocrates and Tree of Life because they say no fruit. And he's had great results with fresh fruit, which seriously calls into question the whole ketogenic sugar thing. I think the ketogenic people have had great results because of the getting rid of processed food and that sort of thing. But Dr. Morse's success with fruit has shown that they don't have the whole picture about sugar in all forms. So sorry for the long answer, but I hope some of those ideas are interesting.
No problem. When it comes to Morgellons, though, any kind of sugar or anything with the skin condition.
Right. Yeah, I know about that, but I think the thing that Morse is bringing up is that the cleaner you get, the less that happens, and that ultimately people are biologically designed to make very good use of fresh fruit. In the beginning, when there's so much toxicity from all these different sources, then the fruit reaction may be too much. And I think if that was my condition, if it was me, and I was noticing this kind of symptoms, I would start with short fasts and a lot of the use of enemas during that with water. I don't think the coffee is needed in most cases. And during that I would rest. And I would start out probably with intermittent fasting, like part of each day, and enough rest during that period, and 1 day a week. I've been doing 1 day a week fasts for several years, and it's been extremely helpful. And I would gradually start getting rid of cooked food more and more. And one of the reasons I think fruit is not the bad thing that that people say is that in my own experimenting with carbohydrates, I have not found a way, ketogenic or other, that I had sufficient high energy without carbohydrates. And I'm not saying science really understands that, but whatever it really is, I have not found a way to feel great without carbs. And I think that's what makes a lot of the raw vegans go back to cooked food, because, most of them believe that fruit is evil or, to some degree harmful. And they need carbs, and so they go back to eating potatoes, grain, or oatmeal, or something like that. And I don't think that the cooked food is really the form that is the best. And the only carb that I know of, because honey's too concentrated, dried fruits can be used if they're soaked and the water's poured off. But fresh fruit, fruits are about the only carbs left in the raw food world that I know of. And the fact that they would have a bad reaction appears to say that the fruits are not good, but I think there's a different reason. And I think it's something that has to be cleaned out.
Yeah.
So
I've been going on fasts here and there, really cleaning my diet out for many years, and it...
Okay. Well, the other thing I found, I'll tell you, when I was a raw vegan for a long time too, and the only thing that I found that repopulated the gut, because I could not digest nuts, they would just go right through me, and I had a lot of gut problems, which I think are almost always present in these conditions. And the only final way that I had the gut get so that it could digest the nuts and the fruit and all this stuff with no problem is with finding a good source of real raw milk. And I know that the raw vegans would all say I should be burned at the stake or something for that. But it was the result of many years of trial and error. And in the beginning, when I started using it, I had all the symptoms that would say that it's undigestible. Genetically, we tend to have what they call lactose intolerance, which means you're missing a certain enzyme to break down the milk sugar and all this stuff. But what I found is that the enzymes that you need to digest it without congestion or anything like that are in the milk. And so if you're detoxing, doing fasting, doing enemas, cleaning out your system, getting to more and more raw food, that you may need to find a probiotic that is good enough. And the best one that I've ever found by far is properly produced organic raw milk. So I don't know if that would help you, but it was a revolutionary help for me. I had lost probably 30 pounds of muscle on the raw vegan regimen. And I got it all back when I added in raw milk. I had to use it isolated from other food. I never found that it mixed well with anything. But if I did it on an empty stomach and then didn't eat anything until the raw milk was digested, I got my body heat back. I got my energy back. My immunity is to the point where I have no concern about microorganisms at all. I don't have any degeneration. I feel like I'm about 30 in good shape, and I'm close to 70 now. So it's working well. And I think that getting the balance of the microorganisms in the gut healthy is essential. I don't think you can even digest fully the sources of raw vegan protein and stuff completely without the gut microorganisms being in good shape. So that might be a helping factor.
I know that gut bacteria is super important in everyone's health, and certain bacteria completely out. Like you find those gut bacteria again, and I was wondering maybe that might be part of my problem, because throughout my life have been very sick and I've been on a lot of antibiotics.
I didn't hear the last sentence. Your phone was kind of breaking up. I'm trying. Maybe you're in a bad spot or something. Say it again.
Well, I've been on antibiotics a lot throughout my life, and I was thinking.
You say you've been off antibiotics or on them?
On them a lot.
Okay, so this is a huge clue, right? Because antibiotics completely destroy all of the necessary microorganisms in your body.
Yes.
Especially in the gut, which is where most of the immune system is. So, I mean, that by itself would open you up and make you susceptible to almost everything. It's a horrible invention.
Yeah. How can anyone get back the bacteria that they've lost?
I think that it's the same way the baby gets the first good bacteria that it needs, which, how did it get it? It went on a 100% milk diet, right? I mean, if milk was this hideous thing directly from the devil that all the raw vegans tend to say, nature would not have made that the mono diet of babies. And it doesn't mean that you can't get benefit from it after you have teeth. What it means is that if people didn't stop nursing, at a certain age, the mother could never have had another baby because the older baby would beat up the younger baby, which would die. So the fact that we stop drinking milk when we're weaned doesn't necessarily mean milk is evil.
Do you
understand what I'm saying?
Breastfed are sicker than people who are only formula instead of breast milk?
No, you need breast milk.
What if,
as a baby?
Formula as a baby. And,
yeah, I'm really trying to hear you. Your phone is still a little bit breaking up. Say that again.
Well, I was just saying that for people who are fed only formula instead of breast milk, do you think their immune system is weaker?
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think that doesn't mean that you can't recover from it. It just means to recognize that's what you're dealing with. Because not everybody has Morgellons disease right now. They may all have the residue from the chemtrail garbage in them, as Clifford Carnicom has pointed out. But they don't all show signs of Morgellons, and not everybody's health is bad. So it varies.
How is it that there's certain people that have Morgellons? I still haven't figured out. They say it's from chemtrails.
Well, that's the theory that I've heard the most. It really, in a way, although I'm interested in it and continue to do research, it doesn't matter, because what matters is getting whatever it is out of your system and bringing back your normal immunity. So if I had, like you're describing, the deficiency of the normal gut bacteria, and then on top of the formula as a baby, I'd also had antibiotics to wipe out the good ones that were left after that. Well, I would want to clean out the bad ones like you're already doing, and do it more. Do as much total raw food as you possibly can. This is just, I'm not telling you what to do. I don't want us to be shut down for me saying this. I'm just sharing an idea, okay? So I personally, I haven't eaten any cooked food for many years, and I wouldn't eat it anymore anyway. Once I realized that it was a source of residue in your body that attracts the wrong kind of bacteria, the residue from cooked food does that, then I wouldn't eat cooked food. I just dumped it once I realized that. But it was really hard because I had to figure out how to maintain energy, body mass, heat, psychological stability, the whole thing. I mean, this all goes together. And besides cleaning it out, it took me many years after that to find that the same way that the baby gets the natural balance of good microorganisms in its gut is available now. And if you look at the old document called the Essene Gospel of Peace, which I've spent about 40 years working on adapting that to how to use it in current conditions. One of the foods that is mentioned in that book as really good is raw milk. And so finally it dawned on me, wow, maybe I should. It was very hard psychologically, but as a raw vegan, but I decided I'm a scientist and an explorer, and I want to know, is this stuff junk or is it any good? And so I tried it. I gradually found out I could only do it on an empty stomach, not mix it with other food, and not eat anything else after it until it was thoroughly digested. But if I did that on top of very cleaned out gut, then over time, I stopped having congestion from it. I started being able to digest the milk. It took me probably 2 months before that really got easy and I didn't get congestion from it. And at that point, all the gut bacteria was healed, and I could digest nuts, which I never could before. And my body heat came back, my muscle mass came back, my sense of calm stability came back, and I still use it now every week. I just don't mix it with other food, but I consider it, I think our government was giving us the hint, because even before other natural foods, they attacked raw milk. And, I trust them. They don't do that unless it's a superfood. So that's what I came to. And I think you can completely restore gut health. I think this is a clue for kids that have been vaccine damaged and their neurological system is damaged. You have to clean the gut and you have to repopulate it with beneficial bacteria. And the people who say, oh, it's so horrible to eat, drink the milk of another animal and it's completely unnatural. And no, it's a boon, because it's been shown over and over again that different species of animals can be raised with complete health on the milk of another animal. It works. And the fact that we've got it available is, we're not, the only ones who are appreciating it is the government, and they're doing that, trying to wipe it out.
Yeah. Very interesting.
So, yeah, look at Robert Morse's detox videos, because he uses fruit, has successfully you're not allowed to say this, and of course I would never say it, but he's curing advanced cancer, and he's just swamped with cancer patients, and so obviously the government's trying to wipe him out too, but it's just amazing. He's having great success. The only thing that I think he's not aware of, in my opinion, is that when he's building these people up after they've done the detox, he could be reestablishing the gut flora with properly produced raw milk, and that's seen as so evil that people won't experiment with it. But I think that's where the answer to the antibiotic damage really lies, after you clean out the junk.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Stay in touch and let us know how you're doing. And is this the first time you've been able to listen to the show?
I've listened to some of your interviews, like Clifford Carnicom and some of the Tony Spark and everything, and I've been listening. I just recently started listening to some of your Q&A shows, so.
Yeah, that series, the Vaccines Revealed thing, is still going on, and that's been great if you get a chance to hear any of that too.
Yeah, absolutely. The show's great.
So, okay, well, good luck this week. Have a good time, and I hope it starts getting better.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, talk to you soon. Okay, and of course, once you talk on the phone, you're not prohibited from staying on the phone and listening. That's fine too. It's really nice to hear from you. And I'm about to go into D. We've had somebody has been trying to call in from another area code that I don't recognize, and I invite you to call back if you can. We just I like to spend enough time with people to get into detail of what's going on with them if we can. If we get widely known, it's going to get more difficult to do that. But we still have that privilege because we're still pretty much unknown. So call back if you can and just hang on, and we will get to you. In the meantime, good morning, Dee. What's going on?
Hi, Richard. Oh,
Hi.
I'm so glad that Cheryl that you called in. That's so neat. And you know, we can go. I mean, there's all kinds of other things too. So it's not over.
You're glad? I'm not sure what you're saying. You're glad about which show that we called in?
No, I'm glad Cheryl called in today.
Oh, Cheryl. Yeah, me too. She has to, in case she's still listening, she has to realize that the reactions to certain things that you do are not always what they seem. And that keeps people from doing a lot of beneficial things because they start out with a negative reaction. And, for example, people that try to fast, their body starts cleaning out garbage they've had to get rid of for a long time. But if you're in touch with Cheryl, make sure she understands this, that then they start feeling really terrible, and their friends tell them to eat a hamburger, and they do, and they feel a lot better. And the friends say, see, that means you were starving, and this fasting thing is crazy. The same thing happens with the raw milk. In the beginning, when your gut bacteria is really messed up, I won't, try and let Cheryl know about this. I don't know if you're in touch with her or not, but if you are, tell her. When you start doing the raw milk, you can get a lot of congestion, and the things that the vegans say prove that milk is terrible, and that's not what it's proving. It's proving you're not digesting it because your gut bacteria is so messed up and so deficient from, being raised on formula and having antibiotics, that the incomplete digestion of the milk leaves waste. And that makes congestion, and your body can respond by getting colds and all kinds of stuff. It does not mean the milk is bad. And I'm not saying that because I read it. This is after years and years and years of back and forth, adding it and taking it away, and really trying to observe what happens. And when it finally changes the gut bacteria, it's digested with no residue. You never have to get sick after that. At least that's been my experience. It doesn't matter what you're around. You don't catch it, so to speak. And it starts having a good effect, but it doesn't happen the first minute necessarily. You've got this huge population of trillions of bacteria in your gut, and the whole population has to change. The balance has to go the other way. So gradually as that happens, which is a combination of cleaning it out with raw food and enemas and fasting, short fasting, and then you repopulate it with the raw milk that hasn't been chemically destroyed to make it grade A, then the digestion changes completely. It gets exciting. Now, I don't know what that will do to Morgellons, but I think Dr. Morse has a really interesting perspective. He doesn't believe in diseases. So he wouldn't say, you have Morgellons, you have cancer, you have rheumatoid arthritis, or whatever. He would just say, you have two fluids in your body, the lymph fluid, which is the biggest volume by 3-to-1 over your blood, and then your blood. And the blood's not carrying away most of the waste. There might be some carbon dioxide and other stuff in it to breathe out, but most of the waste is going out through the lymph system. And if the lymph is not moving and it's stagnated, which it is in most people, then the waste builds up. And according to your exact body situation, you have different symptoms. Doesn't mean you caught a different disease. And whatever the symptoms are, they start backtracking and reversing when you clean it out and change the gut bacteria. And the best probiotic I've ever seen is the raw milk that's still alive.
Yeah, I just made a huge discovery. Hey, Richard, do you have a way to filter your mic?
Filter the mic? What's it doing? Is it getting noisy?
Yeah, it's echoing.
I can't hear the echo. I don't know. I'll see.
Oh, okay. I just thought Doug before said there was a way you could put something over your mic or something. So it doesn't
yeah, but that's not for the echo. That's for like a popping sound or something. So if you're hearing that, yeah, I can try that. How about now? Is that any better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no.
No.
It took a delay, but anyways, I did make a discovery just recently on that Proby from the raw milk thing.
Mhm.
And that was that, I make my own cultured cottage cheese or clabbered Curzon whey.
Yeah.
Well, my last batch I made, I ate it right away, and usually don't because it's late or whatever, and I just put it in the refrigerator in little jars and then eat it a little at a time. But this time I was really hungry, so I ate a big bowl of it before I refrigerated it.
Oh, yeah.
And I had the best reactions I've ever had from it. I mean, at first it kind of felt weird, like almost lactose intolerance, which I don't get when it's refrigerated. But my whole experience for the next 24 hours was totally amazing, like just my brain, all kinds of good stuff going on. Gut, too, energy level, everything was better from not refrigerating it. So I think what I'm going to do is just do small, like 1 jar every day instead of 1 batch a week, and that way I won't have to refrigerate it.
Yeah, you're getting closer to having it completely fresh, I guess, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, well, no, I can put the milk in the fridge and it'll keep for a week, but if I make it into the cultured cheese, and then refrigerated the cheese, it's not as potent as if I took the milk out of the refrigerator and let that culture by itself and then use it without refrigerating it.
Oh, I see. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, so
it's amazing what a wonderful boon to humanity bacteria are. And again, we should have trusted government, which is telling us that they're terrible, and they wouldn't put this huge emphasis on bacteria being on the verge of wiping out humanity every second, unless they were one of the best things that we could possibly have. And I think that's where immunity is going to come from, is having them fully active in the body. In the right balance.
I think clabbered milk is what the olden days people used to do when they didn't have refrigeration. They just let it every day's milk clabber or culture.
Exactly, which now you would be told to think that was the most dangerous thing you could possibly do.
I know.
And probably makes you a Russian agent as well.
Well, and I'm assuming that when you say carbs that you're using, you're not meaning grain and potatoes and stuff. You're meaning nuts and seeds, aren't you?
Carbs is anything that turns into sugar, basically.
Okay.
So that means grains, for example, if you cook them, in your body they have what's called a huge, sugar response, basically, is what it is. And so that's what you feel is this surge of energy from sugar, basically, because your cells use sugar as food. And there are different forms of it. Grains are a huge source, but so fruits also produce it in a different form called fructose. And, the body can also create sugar by breaking down fat a little slower, and it's a different process, but it can do it. And so whatever you're getting sugar from, that's what I'm calling your source of carbohydrates. And the people who follow the ketogenic diet approach, which really has helped a lot of people, mostly because they get rid of all the processed garbage, they get their sugar from breaking down fat. It's called fat adapting. And it has had some good results, but when it was really checked to see if it was an actual complete cancer answer, it wasn't. And there have been some famous people talking about how they really tried to experiment with ketogenic being a cure for all these things, but it had a lot of shortcomings. And what I find interesting is that Dr. Morse in Florida is having spectacular positive results emphasizing fruit. And sometimes, if people start on fruit and they're not very clean, they can get some severe cleansing reactions. But in the long run, he's finding that it's between that and fasting, he's curing almost everything. And I think what he's short on is that after you've done the detox and gotten it to a pretty good level, you need some rebuilding. And I've seen so much better results with raw milk as a probiotic. And Ken Rollo was on the show saying that osteoporosis was reversed in cases that he knew about, as well as in his own skeletal problem that he had. He cured it by eating some raw dairy. And if you just go absolutely on a belief system that can't stand to be looked at, you can miss some important things.
Yeah, well, I cut fruit and sugars and grains out completely for a long, long time, and I still was having problems. And I have chronic fatigue. Right. I mean, I'm tired. My cells are kind of tired, but I found that the sugars, the reason that I dropped them for a while was because they were causing a fungal overgrowth, which was kind of really getting my skin bad and Morgellon type things going on. And keeping the fungus in check is really, I think, it was helpful to me, but I found out that I needed the sugars, so starving myself of sugars in general wasn't really the best thing for me. However, neither was a fungal overload. So I finally figured out that just being able to digest helped a lot. So I still have to do a lot of digestive enzymes. It has to do with my pancreas. Okay. And that is what's supposed to make enzymes, but that wasn't working.
Yeah.
But
I think a lot of these things can eventually come back.
Yeah, I agree. Because I've tried it since then, going on just fruit, even being hypoglycemic or borderline diabetic, and it actually did reverse that problem.
Yeah.
So I believe
that's the same thing he's saying. I think it's true. And I think there's different forms of carbs, and that ones that are cooked leave a residue that invite a certain kind of bacterial balance in the gut that is not optimum. And if there's, a problem in converting energy in the cells, which is chronic fatigue and things like that, it still comes down to the combination of cleaning and then reestablishing good bacteria. But then on top of that, I think you need the carbs. I've tried it over and over again without them, and totally raw ketogenic and stuff like that, and I didn't have any energy.
You're not talking about grains, are you?
Well, cooked grains are carbs, yeah. But I'm talking about after giving up cooked food and just using raw food. I tried raw food for a long time with no carbs, meaning no fruit. And I've met a lot of people like that. They all look really emaciated and unstable.
Do you eat grains?
No, I don't eat. I haven't eaten cooked food for a long time.
Well, what carbs do you use?
Just fruit.
Okay, that's what I wanted to figure out what you're saying, because people think of grain when you say carbs.
No. On a raw diet, you can't really eat grains unless you sprout them, and at that point they're not carbs, they're greens.
Right.
So yeah, the only carb I've found that is really helpful in a raw diet is fruit.
Yeah, I'm finding the same thing, that now I'm just on the cultured raw milk and fruit. That's basically all my body wants right now. It's really different.
So that's good. The main thing is to tune into your individual one. I mean, you have to be a super observant scientist every day, basically. And like for me, I tried that with good raw milk and fruit, and it was not adequate. And I had to grind up nuts and seeds and add that with some Himalayan salt in it, and that was it. That's all I need.
Yeah, I probably need that too.
I feel so much stronger that way. There's no comparison. And I've tried probably 50 times taking out nuts and seeds and then putting them back in. And for my body right now, it's totally essential. But that's what everybody has to figure out, for their own situation, I think.
Well, by feeling good, I meant not really horribly sick. It didn't mean I had my energy back. So if I add the nuts and seeds, I'll get more energy back.
Yeah, exactly. And I found out that my body could use the nuts and seeds much more by grinding them up fine before I ate them. And then I'd mix them up with Himalayan salt and sometimes some fresh pollen if I could get it. And I'll have maybe even a little bit of seaweed because it's a heavy mineral mix, And I'm not telling anybody else to eat that. I'm just giving it as an example of how you experiment and explore. And if you're observing extremely intently and realizing that what's going on may not be what you think, you learn a lot. It's an amazing education. And now I use that every day, except once a week when I'm fasting. And my energy never goes down.
Yeah, I want to try that for sure. I haven't yet, but I really do. The metals and the viruses is another subject, and I have had Morgellon, skin things bursting out all over and all that too. And I did a heavy metal test called the push test through Dr. Data Lab. Mm-hmm. And it showed extreme heavy metal poisoning in my body, and I think that's why I'm prone to so easily getting fungal overgrowth.
Could really be, yeah.
And so I was trying to figure out, why can I not get rid of these metals? Why are they clinging to me? And I finally figured out that it was because of the viruses.
Okay.
And they were introduced, through vaccines. That's notorious for doing that.
Yeah, sure, right.
So in order
the body also can clean those out too.
Well, it's kind of a vicious cycle between the metals and the viruses. The metals don't want to release very easily when the viruses are holding them there, and the viruses don't want to clear out when they're clinging to the metals. So I tried the chelation, like with the EDTA for lead and the DMPS and the D something A. Anyways, that was for the mercury. So lead and mercury basically is what I was looking at trying to detox. But it did let go when I did those things, but it was just it just stirred it up in my blood so bad that it made me even sicker. So I realized I'd have to do it really slowly.
Yeah, you can do it gradually. And your body is going to automatically do it gradually anyway, because those viruses don't like to do anything in an environment that's not good for them.
What do you mean by that?
If the cleaner your system gets, they're not going to like being there.
Oh, right. They won't have a necessity.
We're exposed to all kinds of so-called pathological microorganisms every day. And they're very conscious, and they go where they're supposed to go. So, for example, the ones that have to break down a certain kind of nasty waste that could be in the body will be attracted to go there and multiply so they can break it down. And their byproducts might be really caustic and damaging. So if you don't leave their food out, then they have no reason to be there. And you can walk through, harmful microorganisms. If your system's clean, then I don't think anything happens. So if they're already in there from a long time ago, and it's getting cleaned out and rebalanced, and it's getting better consistently, then they're going to be more and more inclined to leave. And the body can, do a lot with taking out metals also. It's amazing how that happens. So I think, all these kids that are being talked about in this Vaccines Revealed series, who have what's called autism, and it's just, the nervous system is being really messed up, starting probably like Wakefield noticed with the gut imbalances, that if their gut was clean, and I'm not saying strategically exactly how you would do this on kids, because a really active, out of control autistic kid is probably not going to be too easy to give an enema to. But some of that might be able to be done with the raw diet and juices and fruit and that sort of thing. And I think the Morse Clinic is probably curing a lot of these people right now that way.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned one thing at a time, because I really had to almost do a mono diet at first.
Mm-hmm. It's less work for the body, and it's the freed up energy that's really doing the healing.
Right. Well, I think that besides autism for kids that are over-vaxxed, or every single vaccine has really nasty stuff in it, but I had the polio sugar cube and vaccines back in 1963, 1964 when they were really pushing the polio vaccine.
Right.
But I still suffer from Guillain-Barré and cytomegalovirus and Epstein-Barr virus and all kinds of, herpes type things.
Yeah.
And it took decades before it took out my immune system.
Mm-hmm. But you're doing
back.
things now to let it come back.
Right, I'm trying to get it back.
The way it's supposed to. Yeah, I'm sure it can.
It's a slow process. The metals, I'm just, starting to be able to chelate them more slowly and naturally instead of, stirring it up and not getting it out. Because I listened to episode 3. Robert Kennedy talking about the vaccines and how they say that the mercury is no longer in the thimerosal, but it really is a different form. So in other words, they're using ethyl mercury instead of methyl mercury, and supposedly they kept touting that the ethyl mercury would leave the blood right away, and he found that it does leave the blood, but it doesn't leave the body, and it goes right into the brain.
Exactly.
So that's my problem. I have this whole metal-mindedness, get rid of.
Yeah. Make sure you get rid of the belief that you can't get rid of it.
Yeah.
Because that's very powerful.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why I'm so sensitive to EMFs and stuff, but also, and ringing in the ears really bad.
Mm-hmm.
But I know with my skin problems, that did clear up when I really watched the molds and funguses really carefully, because I'm extremely mold sensitive because of my metal poisonings, because mold proliferates really easily in my body. So just walking into the grocery store, they have these fans that blow on your head when you walk through the door.
Yeah,
and
I know.
It's all got mold in it, and I get a dose of it every time I go through that door. So I found a back door that didn't have a blower.
Oh, good. Excellent. The other thing you could do is practice holding your breath for about 30 seconds when you go through the door.
Well, it lands on my hair and my clothes and my skin, and I found out that I have to, as soon as I get home, before I unload any groceries, I have to jump in the shower and put all my clothes in the washing machine.
Exactly. That's a good idea.
But, molds are a really huge issue for people that have heavy metals built up, and getting rid of mercury really takes a long time. And then the viruses that are thriving on it get into the nervous system. Mm-hmm. So my nerves were on fire for a long time. And they still, I still have problems where I can feel a lot of pain in my spine, and I have to I found mint helps, menthol or mint. They don't, the viruses don't like it, so it soaks through my skin and they move out of my spine, which helps a lot. Yeah,
there's some really good essential oils like that. One of our earlier archives says about it.
Tasha Lee, is that who you're referring to?
Tasha mentioned it, but we had a guy on who was a professional in just essential oils. I don't remember his name, unfortunately, but it was a year or two ago, I guess. And but you can find all kinds of YouTube videos for free about different helpful essential oils, and they're really nice to know about. Very valuable tool.
Yeah, I'm starting to see that the war that's on for our mind is like what you mentioned, the Internet of Things. Mm-hmm. That's been around for a while. I mean, it's just starting to be known more about it, but it has to do with the chemtrails and the methyl aluminum, and barium and all that, strontium, heavy metals, but it's also got to do with other things like what Clifford Carnicom was saying. There's stuff in there that we don't even know what it is, and it's stuff that nobody's ever known about, and just weird things.
Yeah, exactly. And the only thing that I can see that we can do is just wake up our own, forgotten capabilities and get our energy field back together. The physical body is the smallest part of it, and it's the part that we're aware of. And so we need to use these, natural principles to bring that back to its normal state. But then around us is this massive energy field, and the closest in one is about 60 feet in diameter, and it's spherical, but it's got all these other complex geometrical shapes in it. And if we start letting ourselves become aware of it, and the general, even if you just have a general feeling of the color or light or harmony or lack thereof of the energy field around you, it can start to change how you feel almost instantly. It's very powerful, but it's so subtle that people tend to think that it's just imaginary.
Right.
It's not.
Well, I like what you said about how you got your body heat back, because I want to do that, and I'm experimenting with the energy field, and I have to heat my body a lot because it gets so cold.
Yeah, that's something out of balance. At least that's what I found. I'm not diagnosing anything. Don't worry. But the thyroid is associated with adjusting body temperature all the time, and metabolism rate and energy levels. And I have not found it possible to keep that all normal without the nuts and seeds. And I guess, because I don't eat very much. At the stage I'm at right now, I only eat, a few things. And one of them that seems to be essential is the ground up mix of nuts and seeds. And government agrees with that. They're trying to eliminate raw nuts and seeds from the market right now. And so I really appreciate that, confirmation that they want to make that impossible to buy, which means, it's something really valuable.
Right. Well, I'm going to try that next, because that's where I'm at. I really need to get warmer.
Just start out with really tiny bits, to see what it's like, so that you're not thrown off track by eating too much. And the Himalayan salt seems really good, and if you use a little bit of some seaweed form, then it's got all kinds of ocean minerals in it. And the only kind of seaweed that I would use anymore is nothing, unfortunately, from the Pacific Ocean. But there's a company called Maine Coast Seaweed. It's in almost all the health natural food stores, and their stuff seems to be really clean. I've talked to the owners of the company and how they process it, and it never gets heated above about 115 degrees or so. It's dried out, but it's not cooked, and it's probably the cleanest seaweed you can get at this point.
Yeah, well, that's good. I'm glad that that Cheryl called and brought this out. I tried chelating with grass juice, and it really works. But for me, it's too much, too fast, and I turn freezing cold. But it does chelate.
Yeah. If things are balanced, you should have plenty of body heat. And I'm doing some experiments right now where I'm doing, if I go bathing, I'll do it in a river, which is, this time of year, it's really cold. And last time I couldn't even completely get in it. But if your body's working normally, it's producing all the heat that you need. And if it's not, it's one more clue, to watch as a feedback mechanism when you're doing certain things in your eating and in your regular routine to see what helps and doesn't help your body heat level. Okay. And I think if you're low on certain things, especially fats, but also certain minerals and proteins and stuff, it could interfere with your ability to make heat.
Yeah, I know. Selenium, I want to get more of that selenium. I think Dr. Group has one that's made out of mustard.
Yeah, that's right. He sells it on Global Healing Center, and so does Alex Jones on InfoWarsStore.com.
Well, maybe the mustard will heat me up. I do use a little cayenne, too. But
it might, yeah. And you have to make sure this time of year that you're getting enough sun, and, I mean, if you get to a certain point where it's too low, a lot of people would say that you have to take D3, and that might be true, and especially if it's too far north. I'm still trying to do it 100% from just sun. But you have to watch that because vitamin D3 is, as Dr. Bradstreet was pointing out before he got killed, is that the sun energy was taking D3 to the mitochondria and the cells and to the macrophages, which are involved in the immune system. And that if D3 was sidetracked, which the nagalase that they put in vaccines to destroy the immune system was doing, then the body couldn't produce energy and was susceptible to all these diseases. So the sun energy is absolutely essential. That's why, government says never get in it, wear long sleeves all the time, and don't ever look at, don't ever get sunlight in your eyes. So that it's really essential, or they wouldn't be saying that.
Yeah, I thrive on sunshine, but there hasn't been a lot lately, but today looks like it. Well, yesterday too, and then as soon as it got out in the sun, the airplanes started flying over with they have some disappearing chemtrails that turned into some weird chemical fog that landed all the way through the trees. I couldn't even see the other side of the valley that I usually can see. It was so thick.
Interesting. Yeah, we have to really maximize our own capabilities, whatever they are right now. I don't think it's a good idea to wait any longer. Whatever we can learn and use, we should do it.
Well, I want to learn more. It seems hard to go beyond, like every time I try to get real quiet and go inside myself and figure, let things come to me instead of me thinking of things. Yeah. What comes to me is my own past, but what's neat about it is it's all the good things, not the bad things. But I haven't been able to get beyond my own past. It just starts playing pictures of all the good things that but I don't know where to go from there.
You can also ask. If you want to know something, then you make it clear in your own mind that you're not asking for any kind of negative input or anybody that doesn't have your best interests in mind, but you're asking from deeper levels of yourself and from benevolent, protective type entities around you what to see for the next stage. And a lot of times that will just come to you if you ask.
Okay, I will try that. Did somebody else call in? Do you have another person on hold?
Yeah, they disappeared though. I don't know if they had to leave or they got cut off or what. But
I talked too long, and I don't want to make people wait. Probably phone bills. I have like unlimited long distance, but not everybody.
Yeah, hopefully most people have that now.
Well, I hope that they call back in.
Yeah. If we ever get discovered, and people know about the show and want to talk, then we may have short conversations. Right now, we're almost unknown, so we don't have that problem yet. But we'll see.
Right.
Although there are a lot of people listening, it's just that I think we have 15 times as big of an audience as we had a year ago. But,
that's great.
But most of them, I don't think, are ready to be public yet. So that's okay.
Well, if somebody comes on when I'm talking, just let me know so that they can get answered.
Yeah, you can even be on hold if you want to, so that you can come back. But,
I did want to mention one other thing if you have time.
Yeah.
I've been looking into, this whole judgment and critiquing issue.
Mm-hmm.
And you told us before that, like, for dieting, or not dieting, but fasting, or eating the wrong foods, like, if you try really hard not to eat what you don't want to eat, then it tends to have a snap-back effect, and you end up eating even more of it.
That's right. You can't do it by force.
So I found the same thing with judging and critiquing other people. And so the harder I tried to not judge people, I got this snapback effect. So I know you talked about the mirrors and, fingers pointing back at us every time we point a finger at somebody else and that kind of thing. So I had discovered this lady called Byron Katie.
Mm-hmm. Sounds familiar.
And she has something called a Judge Your Neighbor worksheet.
Uh-huh.
So it's actually a good judging your neighbor thing, because it has a way of turning it back around to figuring out the truth about where that judgment is coming from in myself.
Okay.
So I really like her method of doing that. And what she says is, judge your neighbor, write it down, ask 4 questions, turn it around. And it works. It's a way of discovering my internal problems of why I'm wanting to judge other people, and it turns it completely around back onto myself. And then
what's an example?
Okay, it is. Here's an example. I am mad at somebody, and I want to have an argument with them, or I want to or debate it, or whatever. Then when I write all that down and I go back and read it, in order to turn it around, I have to ask 4 questions. So the questions are, I don't ever want to, whatever it is that we were arguing about. Then my next question to myself, and then I write down what I feel about that. And then my next question is, am I willing to experience whatever it was that I didn't think was good that they were doing? And then my other question is, well, it's a statement. Actually, it's an I statement. I look forward to whatever it is I was judging them about. And when I go through all those processes, it brings the truth to the surface of where it was all coming from in the first place. And I start to realize it wasn't really them at all. It was my hanging on to some kind of a fear or not being open to reality in some way.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Anything that helps becoming more conscious is worth it. And the fear thing is interesting because usually behind anger and condemnation or anything like that is almost always fear.
Right. But, I mean, we don't see it. It's hidden a lot in our subconscious.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if anybody wants to look at it, it's like it's thework.com, and it's called a Judge Your Neighbor worksheet.
Okay.
Anyways,
how's
it really...
How's it spelled? THEWORK?
Yeah.
Okay.
And her name is Byron, BYRON, Katie, KATIE.
Okay.
And she just discovered it by really wanting to find out the truth of where her criticisms were coming from. And she did. She figured it out. You just have to turn it back in on yourself by asking these questions. Well, first you write down all the things, let it flow, use all the language you want, what you would be telling your neighbor if you were, telling them how stupid they are. I mean, what you think is stupid. And then when you actually get to the very end of it and you turn it all back on yourself, it's so revealing. It just brings all that subconscious stuff out. And once you see that it's silly, you can let go of it really easily.
Yeah, that sounds very, very positive.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that out because I found it really useful.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to figure out, how to find out what's in my subconscious. And that's why I'm extremely interested in going to your workshop thing, because I really want to know how to...
I hope you can figure out a way to do it. We're getting more people calling James, and that's a really neat thing. If you see the flyer, which is on the lostartsradio.com website, James, the person who's going to be teaching this workshop, has actually put his home phone number and his email address there. So anybody that has any questions is invited to contact him.
Wow, that sounds great. When does somebody have to sign up by? Do we have to have, the funding together before we sign up? Or
I think he's got like 3 different plans where first of all, he's making it cheaper than it usually is, and then he's also letting people have installment plans without any service charge. So I think the total charge is $555, and I know it's possible to do it in 3 equal amounts. And then also, he sometimes has programs where if somebody really has no money and they really want to come anyway, then there are ways for them to go do some kind of public service that's official, working for some agency or something, getting the hours signed for, and then crediting them so much per hour that they worked as if they had paid the money. But he's got to have a certain amount of people to at least cover the minimum costs of it, or he can't come. And then if he gets more than that, I told him if he gets too many, I'll help him find a big place to hold it and make sure it works out. So,
good.
As long as he gets a certain minimum number, it will happen. And I don't know if people are all waiting till the last minute, but people should at least let him know soon that they want to come, even if they can't pay for it yet, because he'll be more likely to hold the date and make sure it, can still happen.
Oh, that's a good tip.
Yeah, it doesn't cost anything to just call and let him know.
I will do that. Wow. Yeah, there's so much to learn, and I'm just starting. Every time my mind starts to do something now, I'm catching it really a lot faster than I used to. Sometimes it gets by me, but starting to really question every thought, saying, is that really what I want to be thinking?
Yeah, that's a good idea. And you get to the point where you can do that in a relaxed manner. It's not a stress.
Well, I'm learning how, but these, like what Cheryl was saying, all this Morgellon, I really think it's just a lot of chemical crap, excuse my language, but it's...
Yeah.
I know when I
Probably
get my bad thoughts in my head, it's usually because of chemicals. Like if I eat something that's not organic, I get bad thoughts in my head. I've started to relate the when that happens,
Yeah. Marcus Rothkranz said whenever he has a friend or something that's complaining about being in a really bad mood or really depressed or angry or something, he tells them to go take an enema, and they do that, and they come back and they're real happy.
That's great. Wow. Well, thank you. I enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, same here. So let us know what happens during the week, and if you get a chance to talk to James, I'd be interested to see what he has to say too.
Okay. Thank you, Rich.
Okay. Talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Okay, so you guys, we have a few more minutes. If anybody still wants to call in, 657-383-1002. I know we had one person calling in that dropped a couple of times and maybe is not able to wait anymore, which is fine. We could try it next week. But I'm going to wrap it up if we don't have anybody else that wants to share anything. I will remind you of a few things, though, one of which is that I think it was a couple of weeks ago, we talked to John in Dallas, who we were discussing the fact that Lost Arts Radio is practically doing nothing to get any money. And if we're not going to disappear, we really need money. And we've got a lot more listeners now. We're growing very fast, but nobody's donating much at all, or at least not very many people. And I don't like to ask anybody for money no matter what. And we've turned down all kinds of sales possibilities because I don't want to start saying you need to buy something if I don't think you really do. So I'm not going to do that. I would rather disappear than be dishonest on this show. So John brought up the idea of the Amazon button, and I finally got around to calling Amazon a couple of days ago, and they have this program called Amazon Smile, which means instead, when you want to buy something at Amazon, instead of going there, you go to smile.amazon.com, smile.amazon.com. So we put a button on our website, too, that takes you there. It's on the front page, I think, partway down on the right, if I remember, maybe under the videos. And what happens is you shop at Amazon, but you pay the same prices. It doesn't cost you anything more at all. And 0.5% goes to a charity of your choice. And Lost Arts Research Institute is our nonprofit. It's IRS approved. And we're on the IRS list as being an official charity. So if you go to smile.amazon.com instead of Amazon, and you select the charity you want, which is Lost Arts Research Institute, happens to be in Sedona, Arizona, and then you go shop at Amazon, every $100 that you spend on shopping, I think the Institute gets 50 cents. If all of our listeners did that, we'd have enough money so that we could keep going, which would be really great, and we wouldn't have to push any product that I don't want to push, which I'm not going to do anyway, because everybody's pretty much shopping at Amazon regardless, and this way a little bit goes to Lost Arts Radio. So try it out, smile.amazon.com instead of Amazon. It's the same site, but it asks you about a nonprofit to support and a place where you select it, and we're in the list. Lost Arts Research Institute in Sedona, Arizona. And then anybody that's got more money and wants to support us on a level that we can actually expand and do our projects, we've got a donate button that goes to the Institute. It's on the site. It just says donate, so you can use that too. I hate having to mention it, but I haven't figured out a way to do this without money yet, although I'm exploring other things. But at the moment, if you want us to exist, we still need to have your help on that. And again, I told you we still have a few minutes here. So let's go to this call in 661. And good morning. How are you doing?
Hi, Richard. This is Susan from California, but I'm on a different phone number this morning. Haven't talked to you in a while.
Yeah, nice to hear your voice. Glad you made it in.
The show's this morning. I'm glad there's more listeners.
Yeah.
And anyway, the reason I was calling this morning is I went to your website, which is really good, a lot of information on there, and I saw this place called Optimum Health Institute as one of almost like a Tree of Life.
That's right. I mean, it's not exact. Tree of Life is a bit more rustic. Optimum Health Institute is more in the city environment. But I've heard a lot of great things about them. I haven't been there myself, but there's one in California and one in Texas, and they do raw food and fasting and juices and health education and stuff.
So anyway, I was kind of thinking that might be a good idea for me. I wondered what you thought of it. So if you have any insights.
Well, I've heard really good things. I haven't been there, so unfortunately I haven't met the people, which is very important. But if they have good people that are pretty conscious of what's going on, the positive things I know about them is they seem to understand fasting and raw food and juice. And I think they do stuff like yoga and other positive health-related things. And if they're close to where you are, I would probably go there and try to meet them maybe on a short visit initially. And then if you get a really good feeling about it, try it out, because it sounds very positive.
That's a good idea to talk to them.
Yeah, that's what I would do. Because if you're going to put yourself in somebody else's atmosphere, especially when you're kind of in a low-energy fasting or cleansing kind of time, you want to make sure it's in an atmosphere that feels completely good to you. So I would visit.
Well, that's a good idea. Yeah, thank you.
But what's great about them is that they recognize that it doesn't matter what name your disease is. The body's the only one that can heal it, or the consciousness in the body. And all you have to learn is not how to fix the disease, but how to get out of the way and they seem to be helping people do that.
Yeah, I think another reason why I would like to go to some place like that is because I'm stuck in my habits, at home, like what I do. I always am on some website looking at YouTubes that are not so positive usually, except for when I listen to you, And then, and it's like almost like an addiction. And I wasn't a cell phone person for a long time. I'm older, and so I kind of resisted. I had a flip phone for quite a while, and then it was like, and I only had that because my daughter said you have to have something. And then I got a phone, and now I'm one of those people that is stuck on it, looking at it all the time, and it's it's crazy. I don't even, and then I know how dangerous they are, and yet still, it's just,
you don't want them on your body, that's for sure. I mean,
and I don't want to be looking at it all day. I don't want.
Right.
It's like,
no, there are other things in the world still happening. I think it's great that you're recognizing the addiction, though, because you can't get over any addiction that you're not aware of.
Yeah, that's why I thought, well, if I could get to a place where they could lock me up, although I'm sure you'd be free to leave, right? But, kind of just where, and I read a little bit on there, they don't have TVs in the rooms, which I don't watch TV, but have it for the YouTubes that I watch. So it's like, it'll, but then I'm thinking, well, if I ever do decide to go, I better find a way to kind of calm that, because if I go from my routine now to like a whole place where there's like no TV and very little internet and really good diet, the whole cleansing thing.
So you want to start now and start getting used to it.
Panic, because it'll be so different.
That's right. It's much. Besides, you're kind of not taking advantage of the time if you tell yourself you're going to just wait on everything till you go there.
That's true.
The time now is super valuable. And as far as addictions go, fighting them is almost never useful. So what you want to do is get attached to other things, and then not worry about the addictions. Just go away if you choose good other things to get attached to. So people have done that with stuff like exercise and yoga, and if you can find a way of meditation that feels positive and focused and relaxed, that's really useful. And being outdoors and getting sunlight is really useful, and practice going out in the sun without your cell phone. If you're going to be exposed to these negative news stories and stuff like that, and you want to continue doing that, then you have an obligation to make yourself strong and stable so much that they don't emotionally get to you.
Right.
And if they're knocking you off balance or making you depressed or fearful or worried or anything, that means you're not doing the protocol that you need to do to prepare yourself to be able to safely know about the outside news.
Right.
So you've got work to do that you need to be doing.
Right. I know. It seems like a vicious cycle, and and I know when you were talking to Dee and said at one point, well, you need to lose the belief, or what was it you said exactly? Lose that negative belief that you lose I don't remember the exact context.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, I know with any negative belief,
How do you do that?
You start realizing that's not you, and this kind of hypnosis has been put on us where we're supposed to think that we are that negative belief or that fear or whatever it is, and no, it's a program like they had in the Matrix that's just running, and we're sitting there hypnotized listening to it, believing it's us. And really, we're the one that is listening to it, not the one that it is. So if you start saying, you can start with a dialogue and just say, what thoughts and what beliefs are running through my awareness? What are they? And if you want to know and you ask, you're going to see. And then you start seeing the belief, oh, I have to have my cell phone with me. Oh, I didn't know I had that belief. You know, if somebody asked me my beliefs, I'd say, here's my beliefs. I believe this and this and this and this, and maybe I am a member of this group or whatever. No, your belief system is that you have to have your cell phone with you all the time. That's part of your religion, you see, that you actually believe in. And so you do an experiment. You put your cell phone down on the table, and you walk outside in the sunlight for as long as you comfortably can. And you come back, and you realize that nothing terrible happened. And that's really empowering. Say, wow, if I did that, what about if I tried this? And you devise experiments for yourself. And they get really fun. Instead of thinking about the bad thing that you have to get over, think about the good thing that you're going to try. Just as an experiment. You know, if it's too hard, you'll know it's too hard. But you won't know unless you try it. And think of really good things. And another technique is to be a counselor for yourself. So you imagine yourself as the wise counselor, okay? And the person that you are with whatever it is you're worried about at the moment comes to the wise counselor and asks them, what should I do? And you let yourself know that you know what to do. And you let the counselor tell the person what to try. You know, nothing harmful and nothing too drastic, just something in the positive direction that's going to change the balance. And then you start doing what the counselor says. And it works very well. And you and the experience is neat, because then say, wow, you mean I have this kind of a source of wisdom living with me now and has been with me all my life, and I never had any idea? And yeah, you did. You still do. And I mean, it's so emotionally exciting once you even begin to touch it, that you start wanting to use it for everything. And you start asking questions. There's a deeper level of yourself that knows, and that is willing to tell you if you really want to know. And you start playing with that. And you can do it anytime, right now. So if you want to know where some addiction is coming from, or how to get over it, or what you want to start putting in as a new habit, you know, maybe there's a class in something that you would really like, or something like that, you ask, and that part of yourself will tell you. And it's fun. Yeah, you might like it.
That is a really good idea.
Yeah, it changes your day completely, because it starts to be really interesting and not just a routine. I mean, you get hypnotized by these negative videos of what's going on in the world, and it's okay to know about them, but it's really not safe to know about them unless you have a certain amount of inner stability that's been created. Otherwise, you just get too worried and you get paralyzed, and all you can do is hear more bad news. So, you know, we talked about what you eat is really important, and everything that you put in your mouth affects everything. And this is why you want to get away from processed food and move toward more raw stuff and all the stuff we talked about, and stop eating various kinds of meat as soon as possible. Well, that is true. But the more powerful level of eating is the emotional level. And it's like we have a vacuum hose coming out of wherever you want to say your emotional center is, and it's probably in what the Egyptians called your upper heart center, upper heart chakra. And there's a vacuum hose coming out of there that goes wherever your attention lets it go. And it's expandable. It's as long as you want. So if you hook that hose onto a video about something horrible happening, and you are so focused on it that you take in the emotional vibration from it. That affects every cell in your body, and it makes you feel very bad. And it also makes you feel like you cannot detach the hose from the video. But that's a lie. So the hose gets attached wherever you want. So you can totally decide with no limits on options where to put the vacuum hose of what you want to eat emotionally. And there's no benefit in waiting, because right now, wherever you have it connected, that is what you're emotionally eating. And it sets a limit on how good you can feel physically. So once you're aware you have that, and you know diet is really important, then you take that hose, just like a vacuum hose, and you say, where am I going to put this? And it should go on to the most beautiful, uplifting, and inspiring thing you can imagine. It doesn't matter if somebody says it's not real. If you can imagine it, it exists somewhere. And you hook that vacuum hose on there and never move it. And once you learn how to leave it there, then you can watch videos about the most horrible thing you want, if you have to find out about something. And it will not affect you. And if it starts affecting you and making you feel terrible, you're not keeping your vacuum hose connected to where it is, so you start over and then you check it. But there's no reason to be immersed in all the horrible stuff beyond what you just need to be aware of to know what's going on in the world. There are millions of people spending all day just absorbing the emotion of the terrible things happening, and it doesn't heal anything. So I would pay attention to what you eat, not just physically, but on this level as well.
I agree with that. Was really good as well. It's frustrating too. I mean, I live in a city in California. It's not a huge city, but it's definitely not tiny either. And everywhere you look, there's cell towers. And I tried to move from one apartment to another where it wasn't like looking at it right out my front window. But then they pop up and they're just everywhere. They're like every block. And
that's right.
And then in the place I picked, you just can't find. I can't find a. This one looked like it had like a place for a landline, right? But it turns out that thing doesn't work. The old landline thing doesn't work. So I have to use internet to have the phone on in this place, and it's like, and I've asked them, I asked the company, well, can you make it? How can I turn that off at night at least? So I don't have any of that running through with browser thing or router thing or whatever. And
well, you don't need the router to have internet.
Because it's like Wi-Fi running throughout this whole place, he said.
Oh, okay.
So he said basically there's Wi-Fi all over in this whole building, and and everybody around you is using Wi-Fi because that's how they do it, I guess. And so he said it's going to help you. You're in it, And so that's frustrating.
Yeah, the plan is to cover the globe with that. So, when you have a choice, it's like I would love to be way far away from population center. That's my preference personally. I don't get to do that right now. But whether you're doing it or not, I think what we were talking about today a lot is it's time to really seriously work on your own energy field. Because the potential of that is much stronger than any cell tower. And we're not supposed to realize that, but it really is true. And if you bring that back to life and then energize it and work on it and keep aware of it, I really think you can get to a point where there's no EMF that can affect you. And I know most of the EMF people think I'm crazy for that, but I really believe that's true. And I think that's our main recourse at this point.
I don't think there isn't really much. I mean, and that's one thing that is great about your put in your information is it always tends toward the positive and the answer instead of the problem, and that's very appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, we could use all of the time, which a lot of outlets do, and they say they're educating you, but it's all bad. And, what happens is when you get mentally and emotionally depressed, your physical cells of your body do the same thing. And it's not just eating processed food that makes the disease. You can actually kill yourself with enough mental depression. So we need to do the exact opposite. If our rulers are going to bring hell on earth, which is what they want to do before they kill everybody, then they're giving us the clue what we need to do. We don't want to be sloppy at this point. We have to have all of our energy into the highest amount of beauty that we can imagine. And we have to keep at least the emotional connection. We have to, not by force or being harsh with ourselves or anything, but by relaxing and realizing what matters. We have to keep all of our attention emotionally on that beauty all the time. And that's a prerequisite to awakening your natural cell tower that you have in your body. And you can start as soon as you're ready.
I really like the point that you bring out right now that, don't waste time, don't, get started now, keep going now, don't.
Yeah.
And that's important because, that's important.
It's always going to be the present, even when you're not in this particular body anymore. It's only going to be the present. So there's no other time that's coming that's going to be better to do something. That whole thing is just a movie. You're in that still point in yourself, and it's a decision that's all yours. Nobody else gets to vote. Every second of where you want that emotional connection to be. And the side effect, when you finally get ready to do it, is that the side effect is you're going to feel really good.
I'm smiling right now, so that's good.
Yeah, in a way, my ulterior motive is to make everybody get high. I just don't want to do it with drugs.
Right.
Because if you make a mistake and do it in a way that hurts you, it's not a brilliant plan. But the high that the drug people advocate is absolutely nothing compared to what you're designed to generate yourself. And it's so automatic and built in, you don't even have to do it. All you have to do is stop blocking it and allow it. And you'll know that you're getting closer. And the image of these really severe ascetic yogis meditating out in the mountains and, causing their bodies pain so that they'll be detached from the earth. And they're making a big mistake. They're real advanced, practitioners and yogis and people like that. They're so happy all the time. It's like they can't stop giggling and dancing around, and they're literally floating off the ground. They try to stay out of sight for obvious reasons. But the real condition that you have, which is the same as the most advanced spiritual teacher anywhere, is so happy it's beyond what you can describe. And it doesn't make you irresponsible. It doesn't make you unaware of what's going on in the world. And it certainly doesn't make you ineffective, because anything that you decide to do, whether it's washing the dishes or, doing some big cause somewhere, is going to be 1,000 times more effective if your energy field is clean.
Oh, thanks, Richard.
You're welcome. Thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah, just what you're actually meant to feel extremely happy once you decide you're ready for that. And it doesn't depend on anything, because it's what you already are. So let's just see what happens.
I will. Thank you, Rich.
All right. And let me know what you find out about Optimum Health Institute when you do.
Okay.
We'll talk to you next time.
Okay. Have a great day, Richard. Thank you.
All right. You too. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. We're at the point of last minute. Anybody who wants to call, we've still got maybe time for another person if it's not long. Our number is 657-383-1002. It'd be fun to meet you on the phone if you feel brave enough to call in. And other than that, I told you about the Amazon Smile thing. Please remember that, because we do get, I think they said 50 cents if you spend $100 on Amazon at your normal shopping. And it's a button on our site, or you don't even need our site, which is lostartsradio.com. You can go to smile.amazon.com, no W's or anything, just smile.amazon.com. They ask you to select a nonprofit charity to support, and if you want, you can put in Lost Arts Research Institute in Arizona, and 0.5% of your normal shopping goes to support the Lost Arts Research Institute, which could keep us going, which I would appreciate if it's meant to happen. And then if you have more money and you can help us on a bigger scale, please do. I'm looking at serious expansion into the projects that we want to do. I have no idea where the money's coming from, but I have a feeling that maybe it's meant to happen, this educational center where we teach about, all the things that we talk about, but demonstrate them and let people experience them in person. I'd really like to do that, and I've got a place to actually build it. If you're one of those people with massive resources, maybe you'd like to help, let me know. You can also email me questions and comments and things at richard@lostartsradio.com. And I'm starting to read the forum more. I apologize, it's taken me a long time. And so the forum is free. You can share a discussion of any of these out-of-the-box issues there. And I see John in Dallas is on the waiting on the phone. I will get there in a second. I just wanted to mention that the workshop flyer, anybody interested in really carrying these things farther to a deeper level in meditation, that workshop flyer is on the website with the personal phone number and contact information of James Morrison, who's going to be teaching us. The videos and articles are up there. The show tomorrow night, Sunday night, is spectacular. We've got Michelle Roughton of Nurses Against Mandatory Vaccines and Dr. K.P. Stoller, Kenneth Stoller from Physicians for Informed Consent. We're going to be talking about some pretty heavy-duty issues, and you're all invited. That's 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern tomorrow night, Sunday night. blogtalkradio.com/lostartsradio or 657-383-1002. And I hope that you'll meet me there tomorrow night. And in the meantime, so we have a couple minutes left. Good morning, this is Richard. Is this John?
Yeah, good morning. How are you, Richard?
I'm doing great. What's going on?
Excellent. I basically just want to say you have a great show today with all the people that have called in. Thank you for all the information you shared with them and with us as well.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Awesome. I was wondering, I know you've got some great guests for tomorrow night, but you mentioned that you've been trying to reach Dr. Robert Morse to perhaps have him on the show, and I was wondering if you've had any success in contacting him.
Well, I did get in email contact with his personal assistant and with a couple of other people who help him in his work with patients, and they have promised that I'm going to be able to talk to him soon. Those guys are so overwhelmed that I hope it's going to be soon. I'm about to call up Hildy Larson, who was on our show, because she's become a friend of Dr. Morse and is down there in person a lot, and see if she can get me through sooner. But you can imagine when people discover there really is a place where people go in with end-stage terminal cancer, intractable rheumatoid arthritis like Hildy or other conditions, and they come out in good shape, not in one day, but once they do the program that he puts them on. It's amazing that you could ever get in there. I mean, the reason that more people don't know about it is that he's portrayed as a criminal by government agencies and they're trying to stop his work, but they haven't been able to do that up to now.
Right. So, I know Ken Rolla speaks very highly of his work as well, so I'm excited to see if you get a chance. That you always have great questions, and I always enjoy your interviews with your guests, so I'm hoping that you have a chance to speak with them.
Yeah, I'd really like to do that. I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully we'll be talking soon. I really agree with what he's doing on detox, and I think that they've helped a lot of autistic kids too, and I'm anxious to find out the details of that. I know that the gut of the autistic kids needs to be cleaned out as one of the highest priorities, and I think it would be a very interesting experience to try to convince a kid like that to do an enema if they weigh 200 pounds and they are nonverbal and they don't want to stop moving. I don't know how you would do that, but you might be able to get, a second choice clean out by putting them on fruit, because that tends to be pretty severe cleansing. And then after that, what Morse doesn't work with is the raw milk for reestablishing the gut flora. And I want to see if there's any way we can communicate about that and whether he'd be open to looking at it. So
I was really interested because I've seen a lot of his YouTube videos, and that's kind of the area where I think you basically have covered the gap where it comes to when you clean all these toxins out. I mean, how do you go about reestablishing the flora just on a purely fruit diet / raw vegan?
Yeah. You remember, if you've seen many of his videos, you know that he talks about the fact that they may need to have some steamed vegetables for balance and stuff. And I think it's not just balance, it's the fact that they're really short on something and they're trying to get more. And even the head of Hippocrates and many famous health teachers who are raw vegans end up eating cooked food. And I think it's because, what I found is I had incredible cravings for cooked food as a raw vegan, and they're gone. And all I did is add raw milk. Right. So I think it could really help people. Yeah, and it's the minerals, and I have to have the nuts, because every time I take those out, I don't feel good. And a lot of the raw vegans that I've met, long-term raw vegans, are so fragile feeling. It's like they're emaciated and they're lacking stability and muscle mass and stuff like that. And you certainly don't need meat to get that back.
No. I'm really excited basically but the introduction of the raw milk has basically covered that missing piece in being, eating raw foods and, having a raw lifestyle.
It changes your mental state.
Mm-hmm. Well, just like what Dee mentioned that earlier, what you called about her experience with, really bringing the raw dairy back to life with some of the fermentation is really basically similar to what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I really couldn't do it before there. I'm not overweight now, but I was 30 pounds lighter when I was a raw vegan. And I was cold. I didn't feel like doing any physical work. I was uneasy, and mentally less stable feeling. And that I was already, and I couldn't digest nuts at all. My gut bacteria wouldn't handle that. And that completely changed. So, now I get everything out of them. It's just, I know there's a reason that the government wants raw milk gone. So I appreciate their teaching us.
Their stamp of approval, right?
Yeah, it's so valuable. I mean, there's so many great government programs like that. They do have some nasty side effects, like killing a lot of people and stuff. But the information that comes out can be useful.
Right. Well, I know you're wrapping up the show, but I just want to say thank you for another great show. And I'm excited to hear that you may be able to speak to Dr. Moore soon. So I'll be looking forward to that tomorrow night's show as well. Yeah, it should be fun. So awesome. We'll meet you there tomorrow. All right. Thank you, Richard. All right, John. Have a good week. You too. Bye-bye. Yeah. Okay, bye. Okay, so we're just about finished, and I would encourage you guys, if you didn't quite get in this time, call us up next Saturday. It'd be really nice to talk to you. Save the number, and want to hear how you're doing, because really the show is totally not about me at all.
it's about you, and that you are the potential, best hope of the whole world. And it's not symbolic or philosophical or anything. I'm literally telling you that I think that this is completely true. And all you have to do is learn the ways to stop blocking ideal balance of health and stop blocking deeper levels of consciousness. You don't have to figure out how to make them. They're already there. And so if we learn how to get out of the way, then all kinds of exciting things become possible. And I just want to share that with you. And this show is about bringing that to everybody's attention. So I hope that you can relate to some of what we talk about. I think health and consciousness are related just about everything that is happening in our whole life. And it's areas that we haven't been given the truth about before. And it's time to make that different. There's a very strong influence to shut up now and don't tell the truth about health, and not just vaccines, but about how you can make healthcare basically unnecessary and take care of it yourself. This has been known for thousands of years. It's time to say it without censorship now. And that's the idea. And that health is the first step. It leads to many, many more after that. It's just the foundation. What's hidden behind the idea of consciousness is so vast that language doesn't really cover it. And that's exactly where you can go as soon as you're ready. It takes a little bravery because you have to actually confront yourself. But you don't do it by force and violence. You do it by complete, relaxed, focused attention. And once you learn that tool, you're basically unlimited, which is your normal state. So, anyway, thanks for being with us. I hope you have a great week. Shop on Amazon Smile and put in Lost Arts Research Institute. Donate to our site. Join the forum, and we'll see you tomorrow night.